Now we're live. There we go. Let's turn off some things and turn on some things and turn up some things. It's our pre-show, everybody. Today is the 220-1101 Core 1A Plus study group. This is our pre-show where I have about 10 minutes, now 8 minutes, to get my act together enough that we could actually do things today and have a good time. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for joining us. We will be getting started in 8 minutes. I am doing my final checks here, checking. I need to make sure I can see my stream better. There we go. Out of the corner of my eye. It's not being blocked by my microphone. Hello, chat room. How's everybody doing? Thanks for being here. Hope everybody's having a great day. My day is chaotic and awesome. I guess that's appropriate, right? You can have both of those. My day is just super busy. There's stuff going on. There's people coming in and out, and yet super great day. Everything's working as it should be. So now we get to do a live stream where I have all new questions. You've never seen these before. We've got a relatively new online system. We've been using it with some other live streams. This is the first time on our A+ live stream. The chat room is here. Hello, chat room. Got folks checking in from everywhere. Let you know that you can join right now. There we go. So you can tell me where you are joining from. Here's how you, and this is exactly where you will go to get all of the questions and answers done today. So I need to close that a little bit. There we go. That looks good. I think everybody's doing well. We got Vegas is checking in already. I still don't see a pin on my map yet from Vegas. You can touch the map and put a pin where you happen to be. Thanks for getting in there. We've got this. Let me check recordings down here. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Recordings are going. That looks good. I think we're in pretty good shape. We're okay. I'm all right. There's the Emirates and Zimbabwe and California and South Africa and San Antonio, Texas. Down by the Riverwalk, we got Nova Scotia. We got more Texas. We got Miami out on the 826, the big curve. We got on Cayocho. Where are you in Miami? We got Melbourne. We got Dallas. We got Duluth. Thanks for being here. There is a lot that we're going to do today. We got a lot of good things. So in the first hour, I ask you questions. In the second hour, you ask me questions. So there's a lot of questions and answers going everywhere. So feel free to join us. Lock it in. We'll be starting here in just a moment. I should probably put some type of timer or counter on the screen, shouldn't I? Isn't that what we should do? I think it is. I think that's what we should do, but not right now. Maybe later. I'm still trying to figure out the nuances of this new online system that we're using from Vevox. That is the new system we've got going. So we'll see how it goes. See how that works. I think this looks good. We can go ahead and start this. We should make sure that this can connect to it while we're in the pre-show, since we're testing things. Do I have a big green light? I do, so that works fine. I know you can't see this, but I'm describing the world around me. Some folks in the chat room. Hopefully, we've got some folks taking the test on Friday. Well, that's pretty good. So this is it's Tuesday. I know what day it is. So there's already got a few days left. So this will be your last chance to kind of lock it in. Make sure you grab those exam objectives. Make sure you use them as your checklist. It's a great way to do it. Do I have to show? Let's show the results. See, I'm still trying to figure all of this out, people. We're still trying to make it happen. See, if we do that, now you can actually see the results of where people are putting things in like this. There we go. See, it's all driver error. It's all me. It's all me. If there's a problem, I guarantee you I caused it. So at least we know who to blame every time. I host these for A+, Core 1, and Core 2 once a month. I also do a Network Plus and a Security Plus once a month. So we do 4 live study group sessions every month. 2 on A+, the 2 cores, a Network Plus, and a Security Plus. That's what we're up to. We're up to those numbers of them. So that's what we're working on now. We're getting there. We've got about 4 minutes to go before we get started. This is not the live stream. We will be getting to a live stream in just a moment. We'll be figuring it out. Lots of folks checking in from all over the place, all over the world. Make sure you check in on that Vevox link. That's the link we'll be using for our live stream Q&A for this first hour. Well, I'm using it for the second hour, but you don't see that part. I guess you do see that part. I put them up on the screen there. So you'll see everything there as well. Hopefully it'll go okay. This has been for folks in the chat room asking about the studio. You can view what most of these items are by going to professormesser.com/studio or following the link on the homepage for the studio config. So those of you wondering, what is this crazy battle station made of? You can figure out what it's made of. It's a little over the top, but quite honestly, that's exactly how I like it. I like it to be just a little bit over the top because it makes me feel good. But really, it's relatively basic. There's a streaming device. There is a video switcher. There is audio. There is the actual control of the video switcher. This is the screen and the device. They're sort of combined. Normally, that's just turned off and nothing's going on. We've got the computer I normally use with a secondary monitor. What? Only 2 monitors? I know. I have to fix that. I've got an iPad in front of me that I use to move the slides back and forth, and a laptop here that normally is turned off, that all it's doing is displaying the slides. So that's what we got. And it's all off-the-shelf stuff. This isn't like I'm recreating the wheel, thankfully. So that's how that goes. We got a few minutes, 2 minutes exactly before we get started. BLT says, looks like fun. It does look like fun. Yes, we are using Vevox again today. And if this is working out okay, we've done now 2 live streams with the Vevox Q&A. I'm starting to get the hang of it. I'm realizing there's some things I need to upgrade on my video side, which is what every business owner likes to hear, which is let's spend some more money. That's not what I'm hoping for, but I may have to upgrade my tried and true video switcher, I don't know, over the next 6 months or so, because there's things I want to do with the live stream that I can't do in the current config. This was like a first generation 4K video switcher from Blackmagic. So at least in this form factor. So I've got other plans. I've got some other things I want to be able to do with this. And I'm really struggling with getting the right things, and the real struggle is sort of paying for it. That's it. That's what we're dealing with. So those of you trying to get in, that's where folks are checking in from. So it's kind of fun. Lots of people checking in from pretty much everywhere. Thanks for joining us, by the way, wherever you happen to be. That is the key. We've got plenty to pull from. I think I should really work through getting some of these done. I'm waking up earlier these days, so I'm trying to get more and more and more crammed into a single 24-hour period. And got to tell you, not really working out so great. It's just tells me, what it's really telling me is you probably need to get more sleep. I think that's probably a pretty good idea to see how that works. Okay, that looks like it is live. I think my clock on my switcher might be a little behind. So that part I find interesting. So let's see if I have a clock here. I do, and it shows 12 noon straight up. So I'm going with that. We've got slides here. We have a presentation. We've got a live stream. I believe it's time to get this thing started right now. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2023 Professor Messer 220-1101 Core 1A Plus Study Group. We are coming to you live from our world headquarters, and we are really focusing today on exam objectives that come to you from the 220-1101 exam. I will be asking you questions in this first hour. You will be answering them online if you are here live. And in the second hour, I will open up the phone lines and you'll have the ability to ask me questions. I guess today we're not doing phone lines. We're doing an online. You can actually submit your question at any time using our new Q&A, which is called Vevox. This is a Q&A that's a little different. That if you joined us in previous study groups, we've used a different type of Q&A. So to keep everyone on their toes, we have one here for you to work through. So I have absolutely lots to go through here, and we're going to kind of break down what all of these happen to be. I think the focus that we're going to have is on understanding where to go with these questions from the exam objectives. That's what everybody's working on right now. So I'm going to have you join us. If you're on a browser, you can simply go to professormesser.com/QA, and it will take you to the Q&A screen. Right now, I don't have a question up, but you'll be able to see it when that comes up. And there is, of course, an app that you can use. It's the Vevox app. You can download that on your favorite app store. There is a session ID it will ask for. Our current session ID is 129-856-994. Now, if you're watching this and it is not a live stream, then one of the things that you'll notice is that there's no way to answer questions interactively. You have to be here live to be able to do that. And for you, I have a rewind question, we call it. This rewind question is one that is asking you about a particular topic from last month. That means that we're able to go through and understand a little bit better this particular question. Maybe you remember it from last month. This is the only rewind you get in this study group. The question asks, a wireless network is receiving interference from a nearby power transformer. Which of the following would provide a measurement of this interference? And I have a number of answers for you. One of them is SNR, WPA, jitter, PoE, or 802.1x. Now, if you think you know the answer, as always, our standing rule is please do not answer in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the links on your screen. Go to vevox.app and use the ID code that you see on your screen, 129-856-994, or you can use that QR code right there to be able to get the same thing without having to type all that in, which is kind of nice, which is also what I did if you go to professormesser.com/QA to be able to lock in the answer as well. So you have a couple of different ways to be able to answer these questions. We're going to come back to this question in just a moment. So one of the things that I think all of us like to be able to know is what's going on when we turn off this live stream. I want to know. I have lots of things I want to be able to do, but we're always online somewhere on the live stream. You can always find us by going to professormesser.com/YouTube. That's our YouTube channel. Professormesser.com/Twitter, /Instagram, /LinkedIn, /Discord. There's lots of different places. So find the favorite social media site that you would like to find us on. Just type in professormesser.com/ whatever it happens to be. And it's very likely you will find us there. Be listening sometime in this first hour. I'm going to give you instructions and information on how you can earn a continuing education unit credit, specifically a webinar category credit. That's what CompTIA calls them. And I'll give you information in that new or in that next hour or so of what we're going through. So just keep listening for that. I'll give you plenty of instructions. Now, if you don't know what a CEU is, then you probably don't need to worry about it. But if you're someone who has already passed a CompTIA exam or perhaps a third-party exam that can take some continuing education, this is something that might help you as well. So be thinking about that, listening out for that sometime in this first hour. What we will talk about today comes from the 220-1101 exam. This exam was released on April the 20th of 2022. It's a relatively new exam in the world of 3-year cycles because we expect this exam to retire in October of 2025. So you really have plenty of time to be able to work on this material. In general, it usually takes about 2 to 3 months. I would say that's a good average for people to be able to take one of these exams. So usually people get through their A+ in about 4 to 6 months. That's about average. Some people do it much faster. Some people like me do it much slower. So it just depends on how you do. But as long as you pass both of them by October 2025, you are A+ certified. You need to take these exams. It's a 90-minute for both of these exams. This exam, the 220-1101, you have to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. And the 1102, you need a 700, a little bit more. Same scale, though, between 100 and 900. And once you pass both of those exams, your certification is good for 3 years. So if you're looking at that retirement date wondering, yes, but what happens to my certification? Well, once you're certified, it really doesn't matter when the exam retires. You're certified. So that's one of the nice things about getting certified is no longer do you have to worry about exam versions and if they are retired because you are already A+ certified. It's always a nice thing. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about topics that come from the 220.1101. That 1101 deals with these 5 domains: mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. Not software. Software is in the next one. Hardware and network troubleshooting. We'll focus and we'll have questions about all of these different topics as we go through. So you'll be able to keep up and know exactly what we're doing with this. We have a number of different replays available for this. The video replay is available on YouTube immediately after we're done. If you have a podcast listening program, you can join us on the podcast side by going to professormesser.com/podcast. You can also pull us up on your favorite streaming audio service. So if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, you'll also find us there as well. If we are not on your favorite streaming service, let me know, and I'll see what I can do about adding myself to your favorite streaming service. It's usually a very easy thing on my side to make that happen. So we'll be able to have a look at that if that's something you'd like to do. One of the things you will notice is that about a day after we finish this live stream, you'll notice that timestamps magically appear in our YouTube video description. Well, I'll let you in on a secret. It's not magic. You probably knew that already. This is thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this replay. Hey, Lori. She's going through this and probably at 2x speed, I would imagine, and putting down all of the timestamps for everything. So not only do you have to listen to me, she also has to listen to me. But she's mandated. She has to. But those can be really helpful during your studies, and you can go back years on our study groups to find exactly what you're looking for. And she's watching the replay of the chat go by as well, so say hey to Lori. And that's something that is extremely important if you are trying to study and find information. These timestamps are just invaluable. When we are not doing a live stream, you can find us in our chat room. Our Discord is here. Go to professormesser.com/Discord to join. That Discord is one that not only has Q&A and text that you can have with chat messages back and forth, but we have interactive channels that you can create and study with other people who are studying for the same exam. It can be very, very useful to go through videos, exam objectives, and even others. So have a look at that. It's at professormesser.com/Discord. It's an amazing community that's being built there. We'd love to have you join. It's something that we have a lot of fun on as well. It's a good way to also send me a note after hours if there's something that you're looking for as well. I can hopefully see that pop up on my Discord and get that back to you. Also let you know that eventually you're going to need to take your exam. And if you're in the US or Canada, I have discounted vouchers for you. Yes, you can go to the CompTIA website and pay full price, but why would you do that when you can get exactly the same vouchers on my site? And you can find them at professormesser.com/vouchers, and they're already discounted. You don't need a discount code. You don't need an extension in your browser. You don't have to search the web for a coupon. They're just already discounted. This doesn't need to be that difficult. Let's make this really easy for you and give you a discounted voucher. Also, if you purchase the voucher from my site, I even give you a little bit more. I have an ebook that I wrote called my Exam Hacks ebook. This is a book I created that has all of these tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years of taking CompTIA exams and other exams. And hopefully this can help you earn a few extra points as you're taking your exam. That is included for free if you purchase the voucher from my site. Something you cannot buy on its own is only available with my vouchers or with the purchase of a success bundle. So have a look at those. That might help you save a few bucks when you're ready to take your exam. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about the question we asked earlier, which is: a wireless network is receiving interference from a nearby power transformer. Which of the following would provide a measurement of this interference? Is it SNR, WPA, jitter, PoE, or 802.1x? I've not really looked at the results, but let's see how you did. About 55% of you say it's SNR, whatever that is. We have 27% that say it's jitter, 10% say WPA, and then we have 5% for PoE and only 0.8% for 802.1x. How great that I can get 2 digits past the decimal point on our 0.78 of you have said it's 802.1x. It sounds painful. I don't think that's good. Well, if you're familiar with looking at interference and how it would affect the information you're seeing on a wireless network, then you're probably familiar with signal to noise ratio. The signal, of course, is what you want to receive. The noise is what you don't want to receive. But since this is something broadcast over radio frequencies, interference is inevitable. You're going to get it from a lot of different sources. So how much signal is getting through and how much noise is getting through? Ideally, you would like a lot more signal than noise whenever you're looking at this. For instance, if you're getting the same amount of noise as signal, so your ratio is 1-to-1, that's bad. You do not want a 1-to-1 ratio with your signal to noise. I'm using just a free wireless analyzer that was having a look at all of the noise and the signal. The signal is green in this view, and you can see the signal in the case is far above the noise, which is red. So you want the noise to be way down at the bottom for sure, and you would like to have the signal be as high up in that list as humanly possible as well. So that's what we were hoping to see, is your signal being much higher. Signal to noise ratio is the thing that does provide you with a way to understand how much of this, from a quantitative perspective, from a measurement, are we getting of actual signal and how much of this is actual noise. And this is a great way to understand if there might be something around you causing a problem with your wireless network. It's a great way to have a look. So I think we did very well. I don't think as many people got signal to noise ratio as we did last month. So you did a great job with that one. Thank you for listening in last month. It looks like you were able to retain some of those, which I think is great whenever you're working through these. So well done with that question. Now let's take our previous questions, put them away. Now let's do some brand new questions. And for you, I have a performance-based question. The performance-based question is one that is not a multiple choice question. You know, the question we just looked at was multiple choice. There were multiple answers here we could have selected. But a performance-based question is not a multiple choice-based question. In fact, it's anything but. It's really a situation where we have questions that are almost they could be fill in the blank, they could be matching, they could be drag and drop. I have for you, technically speaking, a fill in the blank question today for our performance-based question. This is a question you've not seen before. This is brand new. We do one brand new performance-based question every month. So this is the one we're going to do today. Let me see if I can open the poll on your side so that you can see what these different things might be. This question asks, identify these motherboard components. And I'm looking here for these 5 different components on the motherboard. My head's in the way of the first question anyway. I'll put myself down here because that puts you right into the mix of things. And of course, you can always answer this on the Vevox side. If you've already logged into Vevox, then you're already there. You can identify the motherboard components that we have on the screen and lock in your answers. Now, because this is a fill-in-the-blank type of question, I don't have a way to compile the answers to this once we are on here, but you may be able to figure some of these out on your own. There's the Vevox information on your screen that you can use to answer the question. That's something that can, of course, be used, and just stay on that screen, and as I change the questions, it will change on your side as well. Some folks in the chat room are saying, would the voucher work if setting the exam in the EU? Unfortunately, it does not. It's only for folks that are physically located in the United States or Canada. So that's one of there's also a few other U.S. territories involved there, such as Guam and Puerto Rico and others. But most of it is U.S. territories, United States, and Canada. Unfortunately, it's not something that will work in any other country, just the way that CompTIA likes to do those. Now, on the test, people are saying, is it fill in the blank on the test? Generally, no. The tests, at least the A+ exams, at least to this point, have not had fill-in-the-blank questions. So that's good that that's the case. So it could be a drag and drop. It could be a matching. It could be some other form to put those in there. Maybe a pull-down menu, and you have to select from the pull-down menu. That just depends. But the important part, and I think if you take no other takeaway from performance-based questions than this. This is already the information you know. This is information that you already have learned from your exam objectives. Quite honestly, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. As long as you know the content, you'll be able to answer it. So don't worry so much about how they're asking the questions. Worry more about, do I know the content that's on the exam objectives so that I could answer the question regardless of how they ask it. And I think I'm sort of leaning into it a little bit here. I'm giving you a question that perhaps may be a little bit harder than an actual exam because I'm asking you to fill in the blank. And on your exam, you probably will not get a fill in the blank question. Hopefully this is one that you will be able to do this with. So let's see how you did. We've got a number of people that have already locked in their answers with these. 80 folks have already put in what they think this answer happens to be. So now I want to step through each one of these and see if my list of what I have here matches your list of what you wrote down. So let's start with the very first one at the top. Number one is pointing over here to, if we had to count them, you might notice there are 24 different options there, 24 pins that are in the list. And those 24 pins certainly would be the ones that we would work through. I think if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to figure out what are these different components, it helps to know the number of pins in some cases. Not always, but some cases it does help a little bit. We've got for that top list, that number one's a 24-pin main power connector. There are other terms that people use for this with abbreviations and other things, not incredibly important. This is a ATX style power connector. Some people use that term, that it's an ATX style. What they really mean is an ATX standard. That is a standard, even though it's also the form factor of a motherboard. Also is one that tells us how the power supply is designed to work with the motherboard. So everything sort of works together with those. Second on our list is the arrow pointing up here right next to that power connector, a longer connection, and that long connection lends itself to being something relating to memory modules, and in this case, that's exactly what it is. It's the DDR memory slots, where we can take memory and put them right in those memory slots. So you've got a few options to be able to kind of work through there. There are some other connections on here. Now I have number 3. I just pointed kind of to this big fan. That's obviously a fan that's there. I was hoping you would give me other options than it's a fan, but I'll take that. I'll take fan from you. In fact, if you could qualify it a little bit, that would work. So if you put down in number 3 that this is where your CPU is, and underneath the fan and the heatsink is the CPU. You could also say the heatsink, because you can see the heatsink right underneath the fan. There's a heat sink there, and the fan is there to blow and keep cool air on the heat sink so that we can dissipate the heat that is coming from all the way down in the CPU. So you have a number of different options there that you can pull from. I'll accept any one of those. And if you recognized, oh, that's the CPU, well, it's the heat sink, well, it's the fan, well, it's all of those. That's where that came from. So number 3, I'll accept any one of those different options, and you can mark that as correct if you chose one of those. 4th on our list may be difficult to see, but you see these slots that are off to the side is what we were pointing to with number 4. Those are PCI Express slots, a PCIe, PCI expansion. You've got other things you can choose from there, but that's where we would add additional capabilities to the motherboard and provide other expansion options. So if you need to add a new Ethernet card, it would slide right into that expansion slot. If you wanted an enhanced video card, that's what we have those expansion slots for. So the name of it tells you what it is. It expands the capabilities of your motherboard. It is an expansion slot, specifically in this case, PCI Express, which on all modern motherboards will be the type of expansion slot that you will see as we sit here in August of 2023. And lastly, we have the silver thing on the motherboard. What in the world is that? What's a battery? It's a battery that specifically is there to keep time. It's to make sure that when we power off this computer and unplug it, when we turn it back on, it somehow magically remembers what the time and date is. And if you turn it on and the time and date is not right, then it's very possible that that battery has failed. I'll tell you that that's the case. That is the battery we would choose for date and time. In modern motherboards, that battery has nothing to do with the BIOS memory. So it's not going to help you at all from a BIOS perspective. That is a time and date battery. Back in the day, back with previous motherboard types, and at this point, it's kind of a legacy motherboard. We really don't see this anymore. That battery also maintained the configuration of your BIOS settings. Some people refer to that as your CMOS settings. These days, it doesn't do that. You can pull the battery out, you can put it back in. Your CMOS settings or your BIOS configuration settings remain exactly the same. So it doesn't help you. We have very in the way that we do things in IT, some of these names, though, are very difficult to get rid of. So if you've called it a CMOS battery for the lifetime that you've been working on computers, most people know exactly what you're talking about. They understand that it doesn't store any of the CMOS. In fact, the person saying it also probably doesn't worry that it has doesn't maintain that, but everybody knows what it is. So we just call it a CMOS battery. We call it the BIOS battery, and that's perfectly reasonable, even though today there's no BIOS connected to that. There's no CMOS connected to that. There's no software that's connected to that. We just simply call it a battery is really the best. And it's only for data and time. So it gives you a little perspective as to what those are. Those were the components we were hoping you would get. Hopefully you're familiar with those. If you want more expertise with this, if you want to get better with recognizing some of these components on a motherboard, because there were others we didn't ask about. We didn't ask about any of the small pins on the side. We didn't ask about these connectors up to the side. What I would recommend you do is just go to the Google machine, type in motherboard, and look through all of the images for a motherboard. When you find a motherboard, especially one that is named, you could also pull down the manual for that motherboard, and they'll have a block diagram that shows exactly what's on this motherboard. It's a great way to help study for a question like this. Hopefully you did pretty well. And if you didn't, we need to start working on motherboards and what these different components are, because certainly you'll get a question on your exam about one of these. There's just statistically probably going to show up on your exam. So we want to thank you for putting that in. I'm someone who really likes going through the details of these, and I really like looking at some of the different options that are here as well. So let's now focus on other different options here. Let's now go to some other types of questions that we have. Now that we've gone through this performance-based question, let's shift gears back a little bit into some other types of questions that really focus on multiple choice. So we'll have to see. Some folks in the chat room are saying, hey, this says https professormesser.com/QA. There were other things you may have seen earlier that said HTTP. Well, if you go to my site, it doesn't matter what you type in, you always get HTTPS. So you can never go wrong. Everything, every page, everything on my site is always going to present to you in an encrypted form using HTTPS. You are always protected there. Here's our next question, which asks, which of the following would be the most common use of a touch pin? Which would be the most common use of a touch pin? Would that be host a presentation, store data on an external device, capture a signature, use a docking station, or connect to an online meeting? Now, if you know the answer, as always, you go to professormesser.com/QA or have a look at the different options available on Vevox at ID 129-856-994 and lock in your answer. As always, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We're going to try to break down what this one happens to be. Of course, on the A+ exam, it's important to know what all of the different options are for expansion in your system. We just looked at the motherboard, and we also need to know things about the different components that we're going to take. So the different components here, this one specifically is a touch pin. How would we even use that? What would it do for you? Well, we'll find out in a moment. You lock in your answer, go to professormesser.com/QA or use your Vevox app to lock in what you believe the answer happens to be from the question, which of the following would be the most common use of a touch pin? Now let's see how we did. And I already know how we did, so I kind of cheated just a little bit, just a tad, whenever I looked at this. And I think in this case, we might have had a lot of familiarity with touch pins. In this case, there are 94% of us that say that's what we were looking for was this touch pen. We would capture a signature. That is exactly what we would use. So if you get a delivery and they say we need a signature for this delivery, these days they hand you a touch pen. If you are on your phone and you are in one of those parts of the world where it's freezing outside in the winter and you have enormous gloves on, one of the things that might be useful is to use an active touch pen that can actually use the devices that you have without having to take your hand out of a glove and type on it. And of course, you get these nice gloves these days for that and being able to use that. Touch pens do come in handy. Even if it's something you could use with a finger, there are cases where a touch pen may be a little more convenient than using a finger, and cold weather is a good example of what one of those might be. You'll find touch pens are really available in a lot of places. They look like this. So there's a good example of one anyway. That's some people refer to them as capacitive stylus, and being able to use those. But I think this is one where if you were trying to take in a peripheral that someone has given you, what would you use this for, is a very good example of the type of question CompTIA likes to ask you on the exams. Make sure you're familiar with those as you step through them, because you may run into situations where knowing what's on the exam or knowing how they're asking the question on the exam is really as important as the content inside of the questions themselves. We'll talk more about that also in just a moment. We did super with this one. We had a lot of people answer this question. So you guys did great with this one. 94% of you chose capture a signature. 5% said host a presentation. I'm not seeing the connection there, but there's got to be one, right? Maybe we mean like touch pen, like you're showing the information on the screen, kind of like what I do here. Storing data on an external device, less than 1%. Use a docking station, 0%. Connect to an online meeting, 0%. That gives you an idea anyway of how a touch pen may be able to help you. Hopefully that can help you understand more about what's available here. You'll notice as we go between questions, I'll also remind you that in our second hour, I will answer questions that you submit. So you're even welcome to submit those questions as we're going through this presentation right now. So feel free to have a look at the different options, know what they might be, and you can submit that question at any time to be able to work through them. Let's do some more questions. I have another one for you. This is the question that asks, which of the following is the last step of a successful DHCP lease? Is it associate, offer, acknowledge, request, or discover? Which of the following is the last step of a successful DHCP lease? Is it associate or associated or associate with it? Offer, acknowledge, request, or discover? We got a few options available. Hopefully you're familiar enough with DHCP to be able to answer this question. All of these are from the 220-1101 Core 1 exam. So if you're trying to figure out where these come from, you may want to look at the slides we go through there near the second part of this, where I give you the section and the number of the exam objectives. So if you need to go back and have a look more of these, it would be very, very useful to know this. So a lot of people locking in their answers on this one. Let's find out how much we know about DHCP. I've not seen the answers on this one. I'm going to have to lock in and give you some more to work through I guess I could also put the QA down there. So those of you that are in a browser also have the option of going to professormesser.com/QA to be able to know what the different options might be. Which of the following is the last step of a successful DHCP lease? Is it associate, offer, acknowledge, request, or discover? It's got to be one of these, right? Be able to work through them. Let's see how you do with this one. A number of you have locked in your answers. Let's show the result. Well, before I show the results, I want to show the question, because one of the things I want to do is now stop the poll. No more answers, no more bets. We've now got answers that have come in. 66% of you say it's acknowledge. 17% say it's associate. Associate is what that is. I'm saying associate as if I'm working in the back room of a retail establishment. We have 10% that say offer, closer to 11%. We've got 3% that say discover, 2% say request. 66% is a pretty good number to be able to work through this one. Acknowledge is what most of you chose on that one. There are obviously 4 steps in DHCP. There's the DORA for those of you that are familiar with the abbreviation we use in our video. And the last A in DORA is acknowledge. That's the last step of the DHCP process. We've already gone through the process of sending information, having all of these happen. It acknowledges the last one of these. That is important to know. Now, that is the terminology used from the DHCP RFC. So this is the term you will see used everywhere as acknowledge. DHCP acknowledge is what we want to be able to use there. And that is really an important part of this. The DHCP server sends information to the person that was sending that message through, and they were able to now see the different all the different options. They said, I want to take this IP address, and the DHCP server says, I acknowledge you using that address, and that is the final step of DHCP. That is what we find whenever we're doing a dynamic host configuration protocol. For those of you that are still working on some of these abbreviations, although it's useful to know that, you'll notice dynamic host configuration protocol doesn't necessarily tell us anything about the process of getting an IP address via DHCP. So that's why I really stress that you go beyond the scope of just abbreviations and you look at every abbreviation or acronym that you're looking at and determine, is this something I would use and how would I use it, most importantly, on the network. So you guys did great on that one. We had 66% of you that said acknowledge is what you would have chosen with this one. And you're absolutely right. That is the correct answer. Well done with that one. So that is a successful one right there. And if you didn't get it right, make sure you go back and look at the details of this. Now, I had at one time a way to put up the answer, the explanation. Let's see if I can do this. Nope, not from here. I'll have to switch some things around. Can I show the correct answer? There we go. I can show it right there. Not on your screen, but on this screen. There we go. So there you go. You've got now, you go to section 2.5, assigning IP addresses is the name of the video. That can help you find exactly the right answer and what you were hoping to find. So as you've probably already seen, there's a lot of information in these exams. We're just talking about Core 1 today. You imagine what we're going to be able to see when we look at Core 2. There's an amazing amount of detail in these exams. So one of the things that I highly recommend you do is to watch as many of these training videos as possible. And of course, I recommend as well that you take notes, but not everybody has time to go through every single video, look at every single set of notes. Becomes a little bit more of a challenge to be able to make that happen. So I've already done this for you. I've taken every video. I pulled down all of the details of everything. There's the index of the 57 or 58 pages of information in these course notes, and they're all in here. All of the graphics, all of the charts, all of the images that are important, all of the details, they are in these course notes. They will be able to step you through all of the details that you need to know whether you watch the video or not. Now, this doesn't replace watching the videos, but it might help you keep everything in one place in one single summary for the 220-1101. And of course, we have not just course notes for the 1101, we have them for the 1102 as well. And if you buy both at the same time, get a little bit of a discount. So you can save a little bit of money if you work on those. We also have physical versions of the course notes. What you just saw on your screen is the digital version, but of course I have physical versions as well. And just so you're aware of this, somebody asked this the other day, is it really exactly the same? It's exactly the same. Literally a duplicate, just in a printed form in the course notes book. You have the choice when you're buying this to get the digital version, or you can pay a little bit more and get a printed version because paper costs money, as it turns out. But I do ship this to you. But if you get the physical edition, you get the digital edition for free. So while you're waiting on this to be delivered, you'll be able to get your hands on all of the content and start studying immediately. So maybe that's something that can help you. Have a look at it. It's at professormesser.com/1101notes. It's on the website, something that maybe can help you with your studies as well. So let's do some more. I've got more questions here. Let's see if we can step through another one. What? You wanted a printer question? I'm so glad you asked. Let's do a printer question that asks, an inkjet printer has stopped printing the color yellow. Which of the following would be the best way to correct this issue? Would we calibrate the printer, replace the ink cartridge, use a different printer weight, I guess we mean printer paper weight, replace the fuser, or upgrade the printer driver? Got a few options to choose from. As always, of course, no answers in the chat room. We want to put our answers in right here on this page. Either go to professormesser.com/QA or follow the links on your screen. An inkjet printer has stopped printing the color yellow. Which of the following would be the best way to correct this issue? Is it calibrate the printer, replace the ink cartridge, use a different printer weight, replace the fuser, or upgrade the printer driver? And in this case, we really mean use a different printer paper weight or a different paper weight of paper to be able to work that. So what would be the right answer? Lock in your answer. See if you know what it is. See if you think you know what answer would be the best way to correct this issue. And we'll see if we can figure out the details from this. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're all going to figure it out as we sort of break down the different options. And the answer is not to kick it. Printers don't like to be kicked, as it turns out. I will say a lot of people don't like printer questions. They don't like dealing with printers. It's one of those that is kind of a necessary evil in IT. There's a lot of printing that we do to get information out of our computers. And if you can become an expert in how these printers work, you will be working magic in how it works. So be sure you're familiar with that. Might be helpful to you. And you don't really have the option to get rid of the printers. Whether you like them or not, they're going to be here. And if you want to be successful at what you're doing, really is not so hard. It's one of those where it looks like it'd be very, very difficult. In reality, not that hard at all. So let's see how you did with this question. The question asked, an inkjet printer stopped printing the color yellow. Which of the following would be the best way to correct this issue? Well, we have a number of different options. Let's see how you answered it. And you can see that 78% of you say to replace the ink cartridge, about 20% say to calibrate the printer, and then 1.7% say upgrade the printer driver, and then 0% for replace the fuser or use a different weight of paper. So obviously a large number of people say to replace the ink cartridge, just over 3/4 of you. But we also had about 20% that said calibrate the printer. So we have a bit of some decisions to make about this one. Well, if you're working with a printer that suddenly stops printing certain colors, it's most likely that on an inkjet printer, of course, that you're out of ink. So there are certain colors available to you on the printer. And if those colors suddenly are no longer there, well, then we have a bit of a problem. The printer that you have may be even a little bit more picky than that. For example, this is a printer that has one cartridge for 3 different colors. So the cyan, the magenta, and the yellow are all in a single cartridge. And then we have black in a separate cartridge. One of the challenges with some of these printer manufacturers, for whatever reason, they've decided that the printers themselves are, if you run out of any of these colors, it stops printing. Even if you run out of cyan, you run out of magenta, you run out of yellow, even though you got plenty of black and you're trying to print in black, it won't do it. Other printers do allow you to print in black, even if the other colors aren't there. So there's different issues to choose from there, but that is what we're really focused on. And if you're not able to get a particular color, it's most likely that you're out of ink. It seems relatively straightforward, but in some cases it can be a little bit more challenging because a printer not printing can be many different things that are going wrong here. For example, it could be that the printer cartridge itself is clogged and needs to be cleaned, but none of our options were to clean the printer or the printer cartridge. So the one that we think might be the obvious answer isn't even in the list. And you'll notice this type of wording on your exam, which is, which of the following would be the best way to correct this issue? It didn't say what is the best way to correct the issue. It said, of these 5 different options, which one is the best way? It may be that you don't have the choice to clean the printer or to use an internal cleaning process. Maybe the only thing you can do is open it and replace the cartridge because of certain rules, regulations, or the way that it works in your particular environment. Maybe your company doesn't like cleaning cartridges. They prefer replacing the cartridge. So these are things that sometimes you don't have control of, and that may be reflected in the answers you see with some of these questions. So hopefully that's given you a perspective of this as well. Replacing the cartridge is so easy, though. That's something that you can really work there and be able to be more familiar with it. And in this particular case, that's the right answer. We want to replace the ink cartridge. 78% of you got that one absolutely correct. That's the one you would work through. I think if somebody's working through problems on their printer and it's not printing a certain color, that's probably the first place you would go, is to replace that cartridge. Let's do another question. I've got one ready to go right here. This question asks, a system administrator is managing all user desktops from a cloud-based infrastructure. Which of the following would best describe this system? Is it PAAS, private, IaaS, DaaS, or hybrid? A system administrator is managing all user desktops from a cloud-based infrastructure. Which of the following would best describe this system? Is it PAAS, private, IaaS, DaaS, or hybrid? Now, if you think you know the answer, follow the links on your screen. Either one of those, which one works for you, and you'll be able to answer that particular question. So this would be one where we really do need to understand cloud-based infrastructures, and certainly the A+ exam expects you to understand cloud-based infrastructures. This is a good example also of taking a particular use case and having you describe what that use case is referring to. This is a good example. The exams never will ask you, here is an abbreviation. What does that abbreviation mean? What do those letters stand for? They never ask you that. They never ask you, what does DHCP mean? DHCP means Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. That's great, but they'll never ask you that. Those trivial type of questions are ones you will never find on the exam. Instead, they'll ask you about how DHCP works. What's the last step of the DHCP process? Not only do you have to know that, you have to know DHCP, okay, what was that again? How do I work with it? What different things are available? You have a lot of different ways to go in this direction. So make sure you're familiar with not only what the abbreviation means, which can be helpful, but more importantly, how you would use that technology. It's the big difference on your exam as you step through all of these. Let's see how you did with this question. It asked, a system administrator is managing all user desktops from a cloud-based infrastructure. Which of the following would best describe this system? Let's show your results. How did we do? Well, we can see that we've got 44% that say it's IaaS. We have 32% that say it's DaaS. We've got 15% that say it's PAAS. 6% say hybrid, and 1% say private. So we've got votes in every category. The real question is, if we're managing all user desktops from a cloud-based infrastructure, what type of system are we using? Well, if we got all of our desktops in the cloud, then we're running desktop as a service. DaaS, desktop as a service, is what we would work through. This is where we would take what would normally be on a computer that is local on your desk. So your desk has a computer with lots of memory and a big CPU and lots of storage space and a video card, so they can do a lot of fancy things. And instead of having that expensive computer on your desk, put the expensive computer in the cloud. In fact, put all of those resources that you can in the cloud, and everybody can share from those resources, which brings the total cost down because you don't need as much memory, you don't need as much storage, you don't need as much power. It's all in the cloud, and we can share the power for everybody who needs it at any particular time. So desktop as a service is the technology that allows you to do that. And it's important technology specifically because it's in your exam objectives. So make sure you are familiar with that as you step through it. I think if you're someone who is working with desktops and you remember how difficult it is, now somebody's having a problem with their computer, I have to go to their desk to work on their problem. But what if all of the desktops were in the cloud? You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. The local device is effectively doing a screen share. which means you don't need a lot of memory. You don't need a lot of CPU power. You don't need a fancy video card. You don't need tons of storage. It can be a very simple workstation, saving you quite a bit of hardware dollars on the desktop, and instead move those dollars out to the cloud, where you can give people an enhanced desktop at ideally the same or a lower cost. So desktop as a service is a great way to do that. This means that, of course, it's all about money and being able to work through it. So hopefully this is one that really focuses on those two. So that may be something that helps you and working through the different options that are there. So let's see what the other options were and how those fit into the big scheme of things. So we have desktop as a service. 32% of you chose that as your option. We also have, if we went with the main option, which was IaaS, that's infrastructure as a service. In this particular case, infrastructure as a service would not be the best description of this, because we have a more specific description of desktop as a service. Infrastructure as a service is one where the cloud provider basically just gives you the hardware. In some cases, they don't even give you the operating system, and they certainly don't give you the applications that would sit on that operating system. So in this case, IaaS, although there's an infrastructure aspect to this, IaaS does not go far enough to give us a full user's desktop. So this would not be the correct answer. PaaS, or platform as a service, is one where the service is a platform that gives you effectively building blocks that you can use to build an application. So they can, like Legos, give you all of the Legos you need. You can build it in your cloud-based infrastructure, but it's really designed for somebody doing application development, not for someone who's trying to simply use their desktop for email, word processing, or spreadsheets, which is what we have with desktop as a service. Hybrid is one where we're using both public and private cloud at the same time. That doesn't really apply to this question. And a private refers to just using a private cloud, which this desktop as a service could certainly be, but nothing in the question really pointed to whether we were using a public cloud service or our own private cloud service. And in fact, it doesn't really describe the question at all. So the best answer here, the one that is most accurate by far than any one of these, would indeed be desktop as a service, or DaaS. This is a really good example of where knowing the abbreviations might help you, but they might not give you all of the context you need to be able to answer a question that is available. If you want to know more about these, they are in my videos, the 220.11.01, section 4.1, cloud characteristics. If you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to give you credit for this, a webinar category credit for this. The way you would do that is to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a link there for Contact Us. You would click that Contact Us link, and in that Contact Us link, you would put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put that this is August 2023, and maybe Core 1, just so I know. But August 2023 would be pretty much what we were hoping to find in that particular case. And then we also would like you to be able to put into that, in the body of the message, a super secret code word of the month. And our super secret code word of the month is hybrid. Hybrid is our super secret code word of the month. So again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put August 2023 Core 1. In the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of hybrid. And if you want to put anything else into that email message, you're more than welcome to. I do read through every single one of them. I do get a lot of these in, so unfortunately I'm not able to respond back to every single one of them, but I do read through every single one. So thank you for those folks that have added context and let me know where you are in your studies and what you're doing with this. I read through every single one of them. They're very motivating to me. So I want to thank you for that. I appreciate you doing that. But you don't have to. You can just put hybrid, and I know exactly what you need. Usually takes me about a week to turn these around, so please be patient. I will get them back to you. Just keep checking your inbox for the message that tells you more about that. We do have some time for more questions, though, so I think this would be a good place to work on some additional questions. The next one I have for you is a question that asks, The text on an LCD display can be read, but the text is blurry and the individual characters are not as sharp as they should be. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be burn-in, an incorrect input interface, overheating, dead pixels, or an incorrect resolution? Got a number of challenges here. The text on an LCD display can be read, but the text is blurry and the individual characters are not as sharp as they should be. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it burn-in, incorrect input interface, overheating, dead pixels, incorrect resolution? It's got to be one of those, right? If you think you know what the answer is, can lock it in on the Vevox app or simply go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Got a lot to go through here. So this is definitely a troubleshooting question. So let's see how good you are with troubleshooting your video information. As always, please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. You want to go to the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Maybe this would be some of them, the answers that you're familiar with. A lot of people locking in their answers pretty quick on this one. So I think we might be pretty good. I'm not looking at the answers, though. I don't want to spoil anything. We're just going to leave this up and see if this. Now, folks in the chat room are noticing that I give 5 possible answers on my multiple choice questions. But if you look at my practice exams book, if you take the actual exam, the vast majority of the questions ask you for 4 different options. So most of the time, you only have to choose from 4. There are some questions that have more than 4 options to choose from, but I would say the vast majority of them really is about 4 different answers. I want to make it a little bit harder, though, in my study groups, so I add an extra one. So that is one that maybe helps a little bit if you're in the details of this. So I think 5 different choices makes it a little bit more difficult to choose the actual response. I go back and forth over that, but from a study group perspective, I want to really see if we know what the answer happens to be. So I think that's pretty much how that works. This might work for you too. So let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, the text on an LCD display can be read, but the text is blurry and the individual characters are not as sharp as they should be. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? And I would say by far, we have 84% of you that say incorrect resolution. Seems like it should really be that one for 84%. But we do have other answers. 6% say incorrect input interface, 4% said dead pixels, 1% said overheating, and 3% said burn-in. So there's always that 15% of folks that say, it could be something else. What could it possibly be that would cause this type of problem? I would say on your LCD display, if you're seeing blurriness, it's not as sharp as it should be. Everything, you can read it. It looks like a normal desktop, but it's just a little fuzzy. The problem is either with your glasses, maybe you need a checkup, which that's normal for me, but what we were looking for, that wasn't one of the answers. The answer we were looking for was related to the native resolution of the monitor that we're using. Every LCD monitor has a native resolution, an actual physical number of pixels on the horizontal, an actual physical number of pixels in the vertical. And if the pixels and that resolution, the native resolution of your monitor, matches the resolution that you've set on your computer, you get a crystal clear display. If you can use other resolutions that are a different multiple of that, you can many times maintain that crisp display. But if you happen to use a different resolution that is different than the native resolution of the display has to somehow scrunch everything down or make everything a different aspect ratio for you. And that's where things start getting a little funny, because the monitor now has to decide, I don't have that many pixels available. What pixels do I get rid of? What pixels do I keep? And in the process of getting rid of keeping, making things look different on the screen, you lose a little bit of clarity. You lose sharpness. Everything starts to look fuzzy, and things do not seem to be as clear as they could be. This may be something that's on your computer right now. So what you should do is go get your documentation for your monitor, find out what is the native resolution of this monitor, then look at the resolution that's on your system, Windows, Mac OS, Linux, it doesn't matter, and see what resolution you're using there. Are they the same, or are they a multiple of them? If so, you're in good shape. But if they're different, you might want to try changing some of the resolutions. Now, this may result in you having a screen that looks much smaller, may be harder to see things because you've now set the resolution different, but there may be a way to set the resolution at the native amount, but tell your display to expand the size of everything else so that you can see things a little better, and it will be as crisp as possible. That is the native resolution. That's how important that native resolution happens to be. Make sure that the native resolution and the resolution of your system are exactly the same. And I give some examples of ratios and how they might work in different multiples. Multiples work great because we can maintain the sharpness because we can get rid of as many pixels on the horizontal as we can the vertical. It's when you get outside the scope of that different resolution multiple, it really becomes more of a problem. So it looks just like this screen right here. It looks awful. You can see the differences. Some of the different characters are bunched up. Look at the N that's in resolution, and then look at the N that's down here in resolution. That's completely different. Well, it's had to do that because I had to squish things down because the native resolution was incorrect. That's what that was about. So if you chose on your screen the native resolution, and you got that one absolutely right. This, again, is coming from my video, the 220.1101 section 5.4, troubleshooting video and display issues. Incorrect resolution was the answer that we were looking for. Now we have some time for, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, but let's do some more questions. We've got more here. So I want to just keep going with these, and we'll see what's next on our list. This one asks, which of the following technologies are commonly used for authentication and payment services? Would that be Bluetooth, NFC, 802.11, IR, or Ethernet? Which of the following technologies are commonly used for authentication and payment services? Is that Bluetooth, NFC, 802.11, IR, or Ethernet? Do you think you know the answer? Please know answers in the chat room. Visit the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, or follow the link on your Vevox app. The ID is right there on the screen. This might be one where you think you know what it is, but is it really being able to work through those? So we'll have to see. Some folks in the chat room talking about that previous question say, is it necessary to memorize the native resolutions? For example, the standardized resolutions, for example, 1080p, 4K, or 1440p, or UHD 4K, or all the different VGA. People ask me all the time about those and what it happens to be. And that is a good example of really knowing the content. This is one where, go back to the exam objectives. If the exam objectives list individual types of standard resolutions and what they are, then you should know them. But the exam objectives don't. They don't expect you to spend time memorizing resolutions because it's very easy to see those when you bring up the view of your display section on your device. You don't have to memorize them. It tells you on the display. And quite honestly, a lot of the screens you use, the screens that I have in front of me, are not 4K. They're 5K, if you want to think of it that way. They're resolution other than the standard, so that wouldn't help me at all. And CompTIA knows that. So that is the situation we find ourselves in here, where you're having to know resolutions or how they work, but you don't have to memorize individual resolutions. Now, if you do get into this, you do a lot with video, you start setting up a lot of video displays and working with video and editing video. And if you're going to that line of work, knowing the default resolutions can help you. But for basic IT, no, we don't have to worry about that. You don't have to memorize all those. There's plenty to memorize. You don't have to memorize those numbers for sure. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, which of the following technologies are commonly used for authentication and payment services? And we can see that a large number of you, 98% of you, say the answer is NFC. Now, we either have a lot of people that got this one right, or a lot of people didn't get this one right. 0% say Bluetooth. 0.5% say 802.11, 1% say IR. This number 2 list is IR for this one. We'll have to talk. Well, we'll talk about this one. And then 0% say Ethernet. Just nobody say Ethernet on this one. I think maybe the IR was sort of a throw it in there and see what we think. Find the least possible answer and put that one in there as what we were doing. Well, in this case, if we're doing authentication, if we are trying to use payment services, and if we've used our watch or our phone, then you've used the near field communication feature of those devices, or what we just summarize as NFC. That's near field communication. It's one where you put the device very close to the payment system. If you know where it is, maybe if you have a watch, you know that you have to constantly move your arm. Where is it? Is it here? Is it where the symbol is? Oh, no, it's on the bottom where the symbol is not. Oh, wait, it doesn't work. We haven't quite figured out the details of NFC. Some places it works fabulous. Some places it does not. So this is the challenge we have with new technologies, is the integration process. It's getting into the water and getting accustomed to the temperature. This is taking a little bit of time in the United States to happen. But NFC is a fantastic technology. You can be very close with your phone, with your watch, and pay for goods. You can use that as an authentication method. So you could set up an NFC door lock so that you don't have to carry around cards or separate IDs. Simply put your watch up, let you in. For those of you that have gone to Disney World, you know that your entire pass is on your phone and therefore is on your watch if you're using an Apple Watch. And you can simply get into the parks by sticking your watch right on top of the scanner at Walt Disney World and walking into the Magic Kingdom or Epcot or Disney Studios or the Animal Kingdom. And you don't have to pull out a pass. You don't have to pull out your phone. You're just walking up, you hit it with your watch, and you walk right through. Very easy to do. All available through the use of NFC, the near field communication. That is the answer that we were looking for. For those of you that chose the other options, we can step through those as well. For example, we had 0% said Bluetooth. Well, that's true. Although Bluetooth can interoperate with some authentication methods, we don't commonly use Bluetooth to pay for things, for payment services. Same thing with Ethernet. We don't generally use Ethernet as a payment technology. We don't commonly use Ethernet as a authentication technology. It's certainly a very good transport of those things, but we don't show up with an Ethernet switch and pay for things at the grocery store by putting our Ethernet switch up. So that's not the one we were looking for. We had 0.5% that said 802.11. Same scenario there. The communication that's taking place between our phone and that device, or our watch and that payment device, is through wireless, but it's not 802.11 wireless. So that would not be the best way to describe that. And then lastly, we have IR, or infrared, which is a technology that's really not, it's losing a lot of popularity on the IT side. We don't see a lot of devices using IR any longer. We tend to see them more in things we would find at home, like home electronics, for example. We still see a number of infrared technologies there, but infrared is not used for authentication. Infrared is not used for payment services. It is almost exclusively for short-range, very small data bursts of information. For example, changing the channel on a television, infrared. Although most of even the controllers we use, the remotes that we have these days are radio. So a lot of them are not infrared any longer. It's becoming less expensive to have a radio in there so that we don't even have to point it at the TV anymore. We can be anywhere and be able to change the channel, put the volume up and down. Well, that is the answer we were looking for, NFC. If you were one of the 98% of you that answered NFC, you got that one absolutely right. Well done with that one. Let's do another question. I know it's top of the hour. We're past the top of the hour. We're in overtime, but I want to give you another question. This question, however, is not one that I created for this live stream specifically. It's one from my book of practice exams. This is the challenge that I found on the internet is a lot of the practice questions on the internet are just dreadful. They're not specific to the exam. They don't really ask you questions in a style that get you ready for the exam. In some cases, the questions are very vague. The answers are even worse. They don't match together very well. And at the end of it, they don't tell you why an answer was right. They don't tell you why an answer was wrong. There's a much better way to do things. And I thought we need to have a better set of questions where somebody really pays attention to the exam objectives. They really know what's going to be on the exam and not ask you a bunch of questions that have nothing to do with the exam that you're planning to take, and can help you learn from not only the right answers, but also the wrong answers. That's because it is my practice exams. This is a book that I created specifically to be able to do this. So let's bring up a question from my practice exams. Let's do the same thing we were doing before. As always, of course, no answers in the chat room, please. No hints in the chat room. We're going to take this one a little bit at a time to break this one down. This is from my book, and it's question 820, which asks, a user in the accounting department needs to print a form on the laser printer on both sides of the page. Which of the following options should be configured in the accounting software? Would we use collate, orientation, duplex, or resolution? So you've got 4 answers to choose from. This is very, as I mentioned, I write these questions to feel like the actual exam. So in my practice exams book, I give you 4 answers to choose from because most commonly that's what you'll get on your exam. So the question is one where you can answer this. Now, I've got a PDF reader here. All of these are provided to you in PDF. If you wanted to annotate any of this, it's a PDF. You can write on it. You can use your cursor to make information on there. There's plenty of places to run through and deal this. If you think you know the answer, you can select it. You've got plenty of things you can do here. Now, this is the answer that's here is one that comes from, what page am I on? I'm on page 9. So on page 9, I would have to scroll through to page 51 just to find out, is it A, B, C, or D? But I really want a full and complete answer. I want a summary of every possible answer that I have here. So I want to go to the details. Now, I could just scroll to page 55. Why would you do that? I've already put links into this PDF that allows you to click on page 55 to be able to see it. So we'll click where it says the details. Zoop, takes me to page 55 very quickly. So that is the one where I think if you were ever in the case where you were trying to find something quickly, that link helps a lot. So there's the question again at the top. Is it collate, orientation, duplex, or resolution? It tells you the answer is C, duplex. And of course, I tell you with these questions, this is why the answer is duplex. I give you the answer to that. Also, I tell you why every wrong answer is wrong. Because when I take these tests, I constantly get questions wrong, and it's good to know why the right question was right, but for me, it's even more important for me to know, why did I get this question wrong? Why do you think that's the wrong answer? Well, every single answer in my book, both correct answers and incorrect answers, are fully documented. So you know why it's not collate. You know why it's not orientation. You know why it's not resolution. And maybe you read the question and you think, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even understand what the question was talking about. Well, at the very bottom, I put a link to the video, in this case, the 2201101 Objective 3.6, and the video name is Multifunction Devices. You can use the QR code to go watch that video. You can click the link that's on the page to go link to the video. So there's always a way to find out more. In fact, I would tell folks, if you already have this book, which of course is available in the PDF form or in the printed book form, that's a big book. It's over 300 pages because it's got 3 full exams in it. Regardless of which one you have, I tell people, even if you get it right, I would highly recommend you read the wrong answers, because it's not only important to know why you got the question right, but on the actual exam, you might get some of these topics like collate, orientation, or resolution. And having gone through this question, you now know what those are, assuming you didn't know before. Now, once you're done with this, I've got a back button that's in my PDF reader. I click the back button. I'm back where I started, and we can go to the next question that's in the list. That is my practice exams. It is the most accurate, and I would say the most detailed set of practice exams available that you can find for your Core 1 exam. It is specifically written to be specific to the exam objectives. I follow those exam objectives to a T. This does not go outside the scope of the exam. It tells you exactly the things you need to know and the style that's important to know before you walk into the exam room. And if you get those with my course notes, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit of a discount on there too. Find out more on my website, professormesser.com/core1pe. Well, that was a lot of information in a very short period of time, but hopefully it's given you a perspective of some of the things you need to know for your exam. One of the things I'll tell you is there is a free bit of resource available that you may not know about. I've mentioned it a number of times today, which is the exam objectives. These are free for you to download and use. They tell you everything you need to know for the exam to this level of detail. I mean, a lot of information here. For example, let's go to section 1.1, mobile devices. Given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components, including hardware device replacement of battery, keyboards, random access memory, hard disk drive, solid state drive, migration, and a SSD migration, hard drive and SSD replacement, wireless cards, a lot of detail here. So I tell people all the time, stick to the exam objectives. They are free and they will help you a lot with getting your exam ready to go. Make sure you grab those. I have a link over to the CompTIA website. Go to professormesser.com/objectives for more details on that. You can also go to your favorite search engine. Just type in CompTIA Exam Objectives. It'll take you right to that page. Very valuable tool and free to download, something you should use the first thing you grab before you start studying. This should also be the last thing you reference because it makes a great checklist before scheduling your exam. I do one of these study groups every month for Core 1. Our next Core 1 study group is in September, on September 5th, but we have other live streams we do throughout the month. 2 days from now on Thursday, if you're here watching us live, that would be on August the 10th, we have another study group for the 220-1102 or the Core 2 exam. You have already written the questions. They're sitting there waiting for you. All you have to do is come back on Thursday and we'll do more of those where it's the same type of format that we did in this first hour. These dates can change, so make sure you have a look at the calendar to know exactly when the next event is going to be. If I do have to change a date, it's changed on the calendar first thing. Go to professormesser.com/calendar. We also have an events calendar in our Discord. I update both of those at the same time so you know exactly when the next event is going to be. Don't miss it. Well, we're not done today. Stick around. We have an after show where I've spent the hour asking you questions. Now it's time for you to ask me questions. Stick around. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Don't forget about my exam vouchers and my free exam hacks ebook with those. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. We also have our course notes and practice exams on the Professor Messer website, or you can go to professormesser.com/1101success. And make sure you join our Discord community. Fantastic bunch of folks in there. Even when I'm not in there, they're still busy doing live Q&A. They're working through watching videos together. They're asking questions about the topics. A lot of great people in there, a lot of smart people in there, and a lot of nice people in there. So it's the kind of community you want to find for something like this. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. Well, that brings us to the end of the first section of our study group. The after show is coming up. Stick around for that. I'll take your questions in just a moment. Thanks for being here in this first hour. Can't do it without you, and we appreciate you being here every time. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. All right, let me take a sip. Let's get things kind of going just a little bit. Oh, if it could just be a little bit larger mug, that would be great, wouldn't it? Okay, everybody. It is time for the after show, which means this is the section where I have to get things right on my screen so that you can see things on your screen. And that really is the key. So let's see if I can get some of these things done as we go through here. You'll see a message on your screen, in fact, that says that you can submit questions for the study group at any time. A number of you have put questions in there for those. Feel free to have a look at what some of those questions might be. I go through these questions and you can submit them from this screen. So you've got different options. You'll notice at the top of your Vevox screen, that's not it. You'll notice at the top of your Vevox screen that there is a section where you can put in a Q&A. It's sort of a chat looking symbol. So you can submit those questions at any time. They do pop up on my side. You won't see them pop up on my side, but they do. They pop up on my side. And that's a great way to submit questions and ask other things that you might want to find out about the CompTIA exams, about technology, about life in general. It doesn't have to be about technology or IT. That certainly helps if we're here. And that's one of those things that you'll absolutely find. Let's have a look at some of the things that have come through. This is one I want to start with because I think this is a good one to start with. This is a question. It's not really a question, but more from Mike. I'm really doing this because I want Lori to see it. It says, love those timestamps, by the way. Let Lori know We love her for that. We do love her for that with lots of exclamation marks. Thank you, Lori. I tell her all the time how awesome these things are. What do I know? Hearing it from you, I know helps a lot. So she does send her thanks back to you guys. I appreciate you doing that. And she does do a fantastic job with those. So thank you for putting that in there and mentioning it. Useful to know. And let me see if I can adjust some of these out. So we've got some that are in here. I'm going to move some things around so that you can, of course, see what you have to do. Now a question that's more specific to kind of IT in general. So let's see if we can kind of focus on this one. This is a question I often get, and it's one that I think might help you as you're trying to figure out things in the IT world. This question is from Mike as well. That says, looking to make a shift into IT from finance. If you were to hire a new employee with zero IT experience, what's an important trait that you'd require? There are so many different traits that would really, really help to be able to do this. The thing that probably helps the most is that you have an interest in technology. There's so many people that I've interviewed because I've worked as a manager at sometimes. I know I had to do it. It's something that I got out of it as quick as I could. Probably because I wasn't very good at it. I really like the technical side of things, but I did work as a manager where I had to hire people. We had to have a staff of systems engineers. They were roaming the earth and I had to manage what they were doing. But that also meant I needed to hire systems engineers and I bring people in. Sometimes I would get the impression from the person I was talking to, they really didn't care about this job so much. They were not so excited about the technologies. And I will say that the companies that I was working for had exciting technologies, did some amazing things. And it's hard if you're working as a systems engineer for an organization not to be excited about it because you're using it every day. You see some of the great features that are inside of there. You see the customers that are using them. They're really solving difficult problems. And when you're in that world, it's just nice to be able to see that. I have a video. It's in the YouTube video description of this video on how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I talk about a number of different elements that are nice to bring to the table. I will give you a summary of those 4 elements because it's a 30-minute video. And although it's long, trust me, it is chock full of content. You know me, there's no extra in there anywhere. So the 4 elements that I say you should bring to an interview to get that job in IT, the first one is a formal education. Sounds like you may have one if you worked in finance. It doesn't have to be an IT education. A finance degree is fine. I have a degree in business management. It's not a technical degree. You don't need a technical degree to work in IT. It sometimes helps, but it's not a necessity. But some type of formal degree does help you, even if it's not an IT degree. The second one is some industry certifications. Well, it sort of goes without saying, you probably wouldn't be here in this live stream if you weren't at some level interested in IT certifications. So that's another thing. Those are sort of easy. The last 2, though, are the things that really set people apart when you bring them into an interview room. The first one is that you have some type of home lab or some type of practical experience with the type of technologies we're talking about. So you've set up in your home lab your own web server, maybe you have your own firewall, maybe you've set up an open source intrusion prevention system, maybe you've got some security tools that you constantly use, you create some reports, you look at data online, you grab some packets, you examine the packets. If you could tell a story to me in an interview that describes your home lab and the things you've done with that home lab, you could talk for 20 minutes without me even having to interject because I want to hear that. I want to hear about the technologies you use on a daily basis. I want to hear about the things you set up. And I'll ask questions of you. Oh, when you were setting up the intrusion prevention system, did you run into any problems? And what were those problems? And how did you solve the problems? You know, those types of experiences you think might not really fit into a corporate environment, but the same version of Windows you're using at home, it's the same version of Windows they're using in the office. Maybe they've got the pro version and you've got the home version. It's basically the same thing. So the things you would do at your command line at home, guess what? Same thing you do with your command line at work. The fourth element that I think is important and that many people overlook, in fact, some people think is a negative, and I don't know why, is that you know someone who works there. This is probably one of your biggest ins when you are working towards getting a job somewhere, is having some familiarity with people that are already working there and trusted. If I'm sitting in front of someone who's never met me before, and I can tell them, oh yeah, I know Bob in your IT department. I've seen him at the Cisco user groups for a year. We've talked all the time about routing and switching, and he mentioned to me that this job was available. I thought it'd be a great opportunity, so I wanted to come talk to you. But they don't know you, but they know Bob. They know Bob would not be sending this guy over if Bob didn't feel that they had some value. This is whenever you get into a new organization, you have to prove yourself, and part of that proof is social proof. We sometimes talk about social proof as they've got a LinkedIn account or they've got a Facebook account. There's also real life social proof that can be very helpful when you're working on an exam. So especially in sitting in an interview and trying to prove someone that you are trustworthy, that people can work with you, that they know you. And of course, they might go back and ask the Bob in IT, hey, you know this guy from your study group? Go, yes, I do. And I had him give me his resume, and I handed his resume to you. This is something that happens all the time, by the way, because many organizations will compensate employees for bringing in new hires. They do that so they don't have to pay some type of third-party recruiter. Recruiters ask for a lot of money when someone gets hired, but they'll pay you $100, $200, $300 after somebody's working there a few months. And so all the time, you'll notice people in certain organizations will say, we have some jobs that are open. Send me your resume. Here's my email. Send the resume to me. I will give it directly to IT, or I'll give it to HR, or I'll hand it into the group. And they get their name associated with your resume. If they hire you, they also will get some money from that. That's a win-win. You get a new job, and they get a little bit of extra cash for doing the finder's fee to get you into the door. So knowing someone who works there works on many different levels. They are already invested. They would not want you to work there if they didn't like you. And they want you to work here because they also get some financial compensation for it. That's a win-win. That's something that can really help. So if you're trying to shift gears, go from one place to the other, especially when you're not just moving up within IT, but you're moving from one kind of type of job, you're changing careers, and this is perfectly normal. People do this all the time, where they were a nurse, now they want to be in IT. They were in transportation, now they want to be in IT. They were in a type of legal firm, now they want to be in IT. Happens all the time. And I tell people, one of the best things you can do is start meeting people. Now that we're back meeting people in person, go to a Cisco user group, go to a Microsoft user group, go to a Palo Alto Networks user group. Meet the people in these groups and let them know who you are. Show up with your business cards, hand them the business card, tell them the things you do, and ask them, you work at corporation here in town? I know that corporation. I've seen that building. I'd love to work there. Do you guys have openings? And then you've now started the ball rolling. Yes, we do. You should send me your resume. Let's get the process going. Can be very, very, very useful. So that's what I would recommend as well. As a follow-up to that, Kelly in the chat room asks, does age make a difference if you're changing careers in your 50s? Well, age makes a difference regardless. Sometimes age makes a little bit of a difference. Sometimes age makes a big difference of the things that you're doing. I would say that based on the stories that I've talked with people about and the things that I've seen, age discrimination, ageism, if you want to call it that, which is an awful word, and I don't like that one, but age discrimination certainly fits there, that's where someone might look at you as someone who's 50 walking in for an entry-level IT job and saying, I don't know if hiring someone that's of this age bracket would fit well into the world of what we do here in the help desk. Now, they're trying to justify that in their mind. What they're really saying is, I don't want to hire an old person. So that's a problem. That's a big issue. And this is where being older helps quite a bit. Here's how I would handle this. If I needed to take a job right now and go back to work for a third party and have them start me at a lower level, what I would do is start using the contacts that you already have. Start using the connections at the job you're at church, at a function that you're at, maybe part of the Cisco users group. You already know a lot of people because you've been around. You know people who know people because you've been around. You've been in the industry, or you've been in an industry and working with people for quite some time. And you never know when somebody who you've been working with in finance might already have a cousin who works in IT, and they know people with open positions that would love to hire you. It's hard to find people who are qualified. It's hard to find people who are reliable. And those of us that have been in the industry for a while, oddly enough, and this is something real that someone said to me, is that it's amazing how people treat you when you show up on time and you do a good job. You're really surprising yourself over the bare minimums of what. But after realizing that and knowing that sometimes it's hard to find people who will show up on time and do a good job, now that you've got somebody to vouch for you, I think it helps a lot with the ageism. I think that is an important part of this. So find someone you know who can get you in the door and kind of skip over situations like that. I think that is something that can help a lot in the world of getting a job, especially if you're starting into a particular industry like IT and you've already been in other industries for quite a while. Use your connections. Use your LinkedIn. You have a LinkedIn, right? What do you mean you don't have a LinkedIn? Go get your LinkedIn up and running. Use every single contact you know, add them to your LinkedIn, get that line of communication going, and find that job. And if somebody dismisses you because you're too old, that's a red flag for you not to work for those people. Go find somebody who can appreciate the knowledge of the world that you've gotten over those 50 years and get in that position. And by the way, the folks who get in those positions, who have been doing this in the world for a while, they tend to move up very quickly because they will spend the time working hard, learning it, being a sponge, and move up very quickly in IT. And IT, you can move up extremely fast in IT. It just lends itself to that probably more than any other vertical type market, much more than transportation, certainly more than medicine, certainly more than legal. I mean, it's just this world of IT is one that is so different than anything else out there. It's the big reason I do this, which is tell people, oh, you want to make as much money as you want? IT can do that for you. You want flexibility in your hours and where you work? You can do that with IT. You want to move up really quick? You can do that. You want to move up slower? You can do that as well. You've got different options. And I think IT itself is one that really does lend itself to this much more than anything else. So a good question from Mike, and thank you for bringing that in. Let's have a look through some of the other questions that have come in. I've got more in here. This is a good one. It's come up before, but I think it's worth talking about from this. Let's talk about this one from Bradley that says, do you recommend taking CompTIA exams virtually with a proctor or in person at a testing center? I've heard horror stories about overzealous proctors. It's not really, I think the idea of overzealous is a little bit overblown. Maybe only a little though. We'll talk about that. For those that aren't familiar, if you've not taken these exams before, there are two types of testing methods that CompTIA can provide to you. One of these is that you get out of your chair, you hop in a car, you get on a bus, you get on a train, you walk down the street, and you go to a physical testing center that is run by a third party. Most commonly, it's a training center, like a third-party training center, or it's some type of college or university. And they have at those training centers and at those colleges or universities a room that is dedicated to doing testing. So you would online schedule your exam, say that I'm going to go to this community college on this day at this time. You show up, you show them your ID. They give you a piece of paper or a piece of laminate paper and a white pen or a erasable marker. They take you into the room. They sit you down in front of the screen, which is already set up for you. And they say, when you're ready, you can click go. And off you go. You don't have to do anything. You just show up and the exam is right in front of you. Now, they are in charge of proctoring the exam. They're in charge of making sure that you didn't bring anything into the room with you, that they check your IDs, they make sure that you don't have your phone or anything on you, they lock everything away while you're in the exam, and they make sure the exam is being done with as much security as possible. And it's easy to do that because it's their testing center. In 99.99999% of cases, those go very, very smoothly. You'll walk in, you take your exam, you pass or you fail. You passed. You didn't fail. You passed the exam. On the way out, you grab your stuff, you say, thank you so much, and you leave, and you're done. The transaction is over. When we got into COVID and we shut down everything, there had been work going on prior to this, but it kind of accelerated things. CompTIA said, well, there's no testing centers available, so we will test you online. So they introduced a new form of testing where you can schedule your exam to take your exam at home. Well, of course, your home is not as secure as a certified testing center. So there are a lot more processes and procedures you have to be familiar with if you're planning to take your exam at home. For example, it's useful if you read through everything, you'll notice that if you take your exam at home, you can only have one monitor. You can't have multiple what? I have multiple monitors. That's not going to work for being at home. So you have to physically unplug any multiple monitors. You have to make sure there's nothing connected to the back. You have video and pictures you have to take. You have to send those to the proctor who is online, and they will verify that you are sitting in an area which doesn't have anything to write anywhere near you. There's only one monitor. There's one keyboard. There's a lot of requirements here. You can't wear headphones. You have to have speakers. You have to be able to have a microphone so they can hear you, and you have to have a webcam so they can see you. What they're trying to do, of course, is to create an environment at your house which is just as secure as the environment that you might have at a testing center. But to do that, they have to be a little bit more strict. They have to make sure that there's no possibility that you might be doing something nefarious to be able to capture the information from the exam. After all, if the exam questions get out, it limits the ability for CompTIA to be able to provide an accurate testing environment. So that's the situation. This is one where I think you have to think about it. So one of the things people complain about is when you're at home, you might be reading the question out loud because nobody's in the room with you. And so you might say, do you recommend taking CompTIA exams virtually? The proctor, the message might pop up on the screen. Bing. Please stop talking during the exam. Why? I'm the only one here. Well, of course, the reason is that there may be a recording device somewhere and you're effectively transcribing the question to a recording device. You can't say anything. A lot of people don't like that. They get thrown off by that. Interestingly enough, you can't talk at the testing center either. They don't remember that part. There's other people taking their test in the room. Please be quiet. They may have to have the proctor step in and do the same thing. Here's another one, though, that's a little bit worse. So here's something you can't do during your exam if you take it online. I'm reading the question. You'll get bing, message pops up. Remove your hand from in front of your mouth. Because again, if we can't see what you're doing here, you may be saying, do you recommend taking CompTIA exams virtually with a proctor or in person at a testing center? You may be doing the same thing. So they don't want a situation where the exam questions may go somewhere else. So you can't put your hand in front of your mouth. Now, at a testing center, you probably can because they know there's no recording instruments in that room. It's a secure room. They know you're not talking because other people are in the room. They can't hear anything. They're listening in too. They can't hear talking, so they're fine. So in a testing center, you probably could do this. But online, not at all. The one that probably gets people in the biggest trouble, though, is when something unexpected happens at home. What if your internet access goes out? Is your exam allowed or disallowed? Did you get through enough of the exam to pass? Do you get a chance to take it again? That's really up to CompTIA. The one that really frustrates a lot of people is that if you're in a room, ideally you're in a closed room, if somebody opens the door and walks behind you, you've just failed your exam. They will close it down right then. You're not allowed to have anybody else in the room. You're not allowed, nobody else is allowed to walk around. This is a testing environment. That's a problem. And they'll fail you right then. Like, let's start the exam. Start. And just then somebody bangs on the door. Hey, have you done the laundry? All this noise, canceled. You're done. You're finished. No more exam. And you've just lost your exam payment. You just lost the voucher you paid for. So that's a problem. And that's why I tell people, yes, you can take your exam at home. You just have to be prepared for all of these contingencies that could possibly happen when you take your exam somewhere other than an authorized exam center. If I was to take an exam today myself, I would go to exam center. In my town, in my city, there are 2 or 3 exam centers that I can go to. One at a community college and one at a third-party testing, and I think there's a couple of others around as well. So I don't have a problem where I am, but we're pretty lucky that we can do that. There are some people that live an hour from an authorized exam center. An hour drive and then an hour back to take a 90-minute exam can be a challenge. Maybe you don't have the money to buy the gas to get an hour up the road and back again. Maybe your car is not reliable enough. I've been there to drive an hour and drive back. And certainly it's too far to Uber. And maybe Uber's not even available where you happen to live. In those environments, taking your exam at home is fantastic because now I can really concentrate on setting up the right environment. The thing you have to worry about is just knowing the rules. So I will say, if you are someone who really wants to take your exam at home, just be prepared for the rules and regulations. Read through every single one of them, understand what the technical requirements are. There's a testing process on the CompTIA website where they can test to see if your system is compatible. Make sure you do that. They do ask you to go through that process before you schedule your exam. It's just a good idea. So I would recommend you do that as well. But it's really up to you. I think if people are working through the process of finding a place to take their exam, I think in person is really ideal, but it doesn't have to be in person. And so I tell people all the time, you could take it online, just be prepared. Just be ready for what could possibly happen, and that way you're not surprised by it. Can you imagine being in the exam, you put your hand in front of your face and it pops up and says, don't put your hand in front of your face. And you're suddenly thrown. Like, oh, I wasn't expecting someone to complain about me putting my hand, and did I do something wrong? What? Now you're already thrown. But if you already know that's a thing, and maybe you just weren't even thinking about it, don't put your hand in front of your face. Oh, yep, you're right. Sorry. Let's keep going. Then you know. So it's really more about expectations than anything. And there are people that have taken their exams at home and love it. It worked great. They had no problems. The proctors were fantastic. It really is something that really depends on your personal view of what you would like to do. So hopefully that's giving you, that's my opinion of the process, the advantages and disadvantages of both, and you can work through there. Other questions. Let's keep going with some of these. I sort of answered this one before, but we'll answer this one again. I think it's worth talking about a little bit, maybe working through this. This is a question from D. From D. D says, I have a scheduled Server Plus exam for Thursday, and I'm feeling scared. I'm familiar with all the exam objectives, but I'm afraid about the performance-based questions, and I don't know if I'm ready. Any advice? One of the things that a lot of people worry about are these performance-based questions, PBQs, performance-based questions. That's what those are. These are questions that are just not multiple choice. Nobody ever comes to me and says, I'm really worried about multiple choice. How does that work? Does it give me a question and then do I pick Nobody ever does that. They, for some reason, say, I'm worried about performance-based questions. But what if you didn't call them performance-based questions? Are you worried about fill in the blank, which I don't think you're going to get on your CompTIA exam, but somebody said, you want to do a fill in the blank question? I'm like, yeah, let's do one. Like, you know what that is. How about drag and drop? We'll drag and drop some things onto a display. We've done that all the time. I can drag and drop. I'm familiar with dragging and dropping things on my screen. No problem. What about matching questions? You know, this matches to this matches to that, this matches to the other thing. Yeah, I've done matching questions. I can do matching. Those are pretty good. I like matching. That's pretty simple to understand. What about questions where you have to put things in a particular order? Maybe an order of speed or order of bandwidth. Maybe ascending order and descending order. Could you do that? Yeah, I can put things in order. Sure. That's easy. Sure. Of course I can. Well, those are performance-based questions. So really, I think people aren't so worried about the questions. They're worried about the word performance-based question. A lot of people don't even use performance-based question. They say, I'm worried about the sims. I'm worried about the simulations. Well, the exam may not have any sims on it. It may be matching, fill in the blank. There might be a drag and drop question. There might be putting things in a particular order. Maybe they give you a picture of a motherboard and have you put the different options in for the motherboard. Maybe drag over and drop what you think the different things are. That's what a performance-based question is. So don't be worried about how the questions are asked. You will be able to answer the questions. They will not be difficult to understand what's going on. It'll be very clear what you need to do on these questions to be able to make them work properly. What you should focus on is the exam objectives, because the information they're going to ask you on these performance-based questions is pulled directly from the exam objectives. I mean, you saw the one today. We did a performance-based question. It was an image of a motherboard. I pointed at different things and said, what is that? That's a performance-based question. It's not a multiple choice-based question. It's not pick the right one of these. It's all of them and being able to work through it. So I think that's something that might help you too, is don't worry about how the questions are being asked. You should instead worry, do I know everything listed in the exam objectives? And I will tell you that CompTIA stays so close to these objectives. They stick to these objectives like it's glue. They rarely, if ever, go outside the scope of these objectives. So because of that, the information you're going to find in the objectives, as long as you know everything in those objectives, you're going to pass your exam. That's how close they stay to those bullets. So learn everything in the objectives. In fact, if your server plus is Thursday, this is perfect. You have 48 hours. So you have 2 days, grab the objectives, and that's your checklist. Start going through every bullet of the Security Plus exam objectives and start checking off what you know. Start circling what you don't. Study the things you circled. Make sure you can check off as many things as possible and go take the exam. If you've checked off all of these things, you can explain that topic to yourself or to someone else, then you can check it off the list. And when you check off 95%, 90% of this, go take your exam already. Go pass that exam. You'll be fine. Don't worry about the performance-based questions. They do have people there have been people that have taken these exams, and this obviously does not apply to every exam situation because every individual exam is graded differently because each exam question is worth a different number of points. But I have had people come to me and say, I just took my Security Plus exam. I answered every single multiple choice-based question, but when I circled back to do the performance-based questions, I didn't even get one of them done because I ran out of time. So I didn't answer any of the performance-based questions, and I passed. So a lot of people think that the performance-based questions are somehow overly graded or overly scored to that would be much more valuable, for example, than a multiple choice-based question. And quite honestly, we just don't know. But what we've seen from our experience is that it's certainly not a dramatic difference. If you can simply dismiss all of the performance-based questions, not answer a single one, just stick to multiple choice and still pass, ideally not the best situation, but it does give us the perspective that perhaps these are not worth as much as people think they may be worth. And I think that's the important part. And in reality, you'll never know anyway. They're not going to give you a summary of the grading. So it doesn't help to try to figure it out. Doesn't work. In the chat room, Gregorio says, my performance-based questions didn't even work. Like on the system they were using to take the exam, didn't work right. I still passed. There's another example. Thank you, Gregorio. I'm marking you down as yet another person who answered none of the performance-based questions yet passed the exam. It can absolutely be done. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal. We'd like to be able to answer all the questions. We'd like to be able to get as much done as we can, but sometimes technical problems get in the way. Time left on the exam gets in the way, but it shouldn't stop you. It should certainly point you in the direction for getting the right questions answered. Just answer the best you can. The score will work itself out in the end anyway. There's nothing you can do once that happens. So focus on the content in the exam objectives. That's all you need to worry about, is exactly that. Let's get some more questions in. That was a great question, by the way. Thank you. I know you're not supposed to, as a presenter, you're often, if you've ever gone to a class on presenting, you should never say, that's a great question. That was a pretty good question. Let's keep going. I'm gonna take this one just because I like it. It's not a question. It's just a comment. But Vladimir says, not a question, just props on the new Q&A layout. It is dope. There you go. I agree. I believe also in its dopeness. I am completely on board with its level of dope. Let's do another one. I like it. And Vevox sort of is a new thing. You've never done this before. It's our third live stream we're doing with the Vevox interface. I kind of like it too. There's some things I would like to have changed. I've sent notes in. I, of course, have sent requests for product updates already. But generally speaking, kind of like it. It's kind of nice. Let's do some more questions. More. Oh, here we go. Polo's calling me out, so we're going to talk about this one. Because one of the questions we had earlier in the study group was desktop as a service, DaaS. And Polo says, wait a second, isn't DaaS data as a service? Polo, you're absolutely right. It is data as a service. Of course, it's also desktop as a service. And that's the problem when you get into acronyms in this industry. MAC is an acronym. What does MAC stand for? Wrong. So whatever you said, I can give you something else. Did you say it was a media access control? Our MAC address is a media access control address, a MAC address. Do you mean it's MAC address? No, I mean mandatory access control, which is a security control from your Security Plus group. No, it's a type of computer. It's a Mac. MAC. It's not abbreviation. It stands for Macintosh. It's Mac. It's a type of computer. So they are MAC, and there are other MAC explanations of this that you'll run into. It's the same three letters, but it means something different. But if you get a question that says, a user is logging into a system and gains rights to their files and folders with Mac, what is that? We're not that's not a Macintosh computer, and it's not media access control. It's mandatory access control. It's not media. It's not any of the other many different acronyms it possibly could be, because the context of the question points you into what that happens to be. And if it's a question that talks about we're taking people's desktops, we're putting them into the cloud, which one of these things is it? You should automatically know, based on what's in your exam objectives, that desktop as a service could certainly show up on your exam. And I don't believe data as a service is even in the exam objectives. So in this case, I would say, Polo, you're absolutely right. Data as a service is a thing. It is absolutely called DaaS. Before the context of the Core 1 exam, it would not be DaaS, data as a service. It would be desktop as a service. So it's all about context, isn't it? That's the challenge you run into in this industry. And it's not just that one set of acronyms. It's a lot of them. So that's when you really run into challenges. Some more of those. Some folks have submitted a few questions into the list that just say hello. So I'm saying hello back to you. We don't have to even put it up on the screen. Thanks for writing. Another question. Let's keep going. We got a lot in our list, so I'm sort of moving things around and pulling out different options that are here. Okay. This one is a pretty good question for a couple of different reasons. So let's dig into this one. This is from RJ, who asks, hey, Professor, I was checking the job pool I noticed 90% of the employers want ITIL cert, ITIL, the IT Infrastructure Library cert. Even for IT support, tech support entry-level jobs, they want ITIL. Do I actually need that? This is going to be a good answer, by the way. I don't know much about ITIL. Could you enlighten me? Well, let's talk about the IT Infrastructure Library. It's been around forever. It is a way to have a better understanding of the processes and procedures of IT, of information technology. It is a way to understand how we get structure out of tons of data and systems and operating systems and firewalls and databases and data centers and cloud and everything that's there. How do we make any sense of all of this? How do we put it into a set of processes and a set of structures that helps us understand why we're doing it? How does technology, let's say you work for a company that makes cheese. That's what you do. Your company makes cheese. But you're in the IT department and you've got Windows and Linux and Mac systems and you're setting up Zoom and you've got multi-factor authentication you've configured and you got VPN connections. What does that have to do with cheese? How does that even fit into the world of cheese? Which sounds delicious and amazing, but how does that work? So the IT Infrastructure Library is a very broad description of how IT is applied to a business or a goal. So you have to somehow link these things together. Now, what managers and directors and vice presidents and CEOs, they're very focused on this. They need to make a certain amount of cheese. They're trying to sell a lot of cheese. They got salespeople that are cheese salespeople that are selling the cheese, probably to stores, to grocery stores. They have to maintain those relationships with the grocery stores. They want the grocery stores to buy more cheese. They're doing all this process. Somehow technology fits into this. Well, yeah, they got emails. They're producing quotes. You have forecasts of the technology, forecasts of how much cheese is being made that have to go into a project plan. And you, of course, have the equipment itself, which very often is integrated into the same technology you're using for everything else. So this becomes a little bit of a challenge then, is how do you get everybody in the organization in IT thinking more about the business and the overall goals of why we're even doing this? And we do that by introducing a set of processes and procedures for the IT Infrastructure Library. That's what we're trying to do. So I think when managers push this down to the level of a technician, this is where things start to fall apart in the world of corporate, wherever you are. I say corporate America. This could be corporate anywhere. Where it starts falling apart is you've got a group on the help desk. They are responsible for taking phone calls. People need to get their passwords reset. People don't have access to the files they need. People are having an error message pop up on the latest update of Microsoft Word. People have a Microsoft Excel file that is corrupted. How can we fix that? Can we pull it from a backup? People are having a problem logging into the VPN. Quite honestly, nothing in their day-to-day has anything to do with cheese. Very little of it has anything to do with the business of making cheese. They are down at the level of a technician. In fact, most of us that work in the technical fields don't worry about the business part because, by the way, we've got directors and vice presidents and CEOs and executive vice presidents. We got a whole group of people being paid a lot of money to deal with the business side of things. I was hired to change passwords, fix corrupted files, work with the backups, set up. I'm doing the day-to-day technical thing. But because it's so important for the managers to help people understand the business side of things, see, this comes from a good place. They want even you, the lowly tech at the lowest levels that work in the room. There's not even a window in the room, but they've got you on the phones answering these things, helping the people do the things they need to do to make the cheese. They want you involved in the business side of things. And they think it's important for you to understand the big picture of how IT affects the rest of the organization. That's not a bad reason. That's a pretty good reason from a manager's perspective to get you involved. Does it help you on your daily work? No, it doesn't. Does it help you understand better how to integrate technology with these? No, It doesn't. Does it help you maybe make your job more effective and efficient by solving problems for people? No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It has nothing to do with technology. The IT infrastructure library doesn't help technical people at all because it's not technical. It has nothing to do with that. Your focus should be getting your A+, getting your Network+, getting your Security+, getting whatever the certifications are, learning more about Microsoft Windows, understanding more about Active Directory, understanding more about the cloud, understanding more about security technologies. That's where you should be focusing your efforts. Nope. You have to understand the relationship between the business and the technology for some reason, which makes no sense whatsoever. It really doesn't. If you're a manager or if you are a manager or a director and you're forcing people in your IT department to go get the IT infrastructure library certification, you are doing them a disservice. They have much better certifications they should be getting. It should not be the IT infrastructure library. But if you are just above that, if you're working at a managerial level, at a director level, a vice president, a president, an executive vice president, one of those, maybe you're on the board, IT infrastructure library is valuable. There's good information there. And understanding the relationship of what you're doing day to day and how it affects the overall goal of the business or the organization is an important thing to know. The weird part is why they want somebody who's doing password resets to know these things. So that's why I don't understand why they, RJ, I'm with you. I don't understand why they're pushing it down to you. I don't understand why they're making you do it. But here's the thing. I'm expecting, RJ, if you're still in the chat, I'd love to know what country you're in, where 90% of the employers want ITIL. I'm going to take a guess and say it's UK. And I say that because guess where the IT infrastructure library was created? Correct, the UK. So that's where that came from. That's why I think there probably are situations. But here's your takeaway from this. Here's the way I really do feel about this, especially for you, RJ, and really for everybody else. If you check the jobs that are around you for the things that you do, maybe you're in the help desk, maybe you're doing operating system and desktop management, maybe you're doing networking, maybe you're doing databases, the cloud, security, whatever it is, and you check all the jobs in your area, and 90% of the jobs want you to be ITIL certified, guess what you should go do? Go get your ITIL certification. I got to tell you, they probably would not want me saying this, but ITIL certification is ridiculously easy to get. It's stupid easy to get. So I would absolutely say, please go get it, because 90% of the employers out there would like you to have it. That is the ultimate answer to any question. When somebody who is an employer or a boss says to you, I would like you to get this thing, your response should be, sure, absolutely. Are you still planning to pay me every 2 weeks? You are? Yes, I will do that. I think that's a great idea, and you should go do that. That's it. And if somehow the higher level managers feel that having the help desk team understand how their job affects the making of cheese, it's their business. So they've made a decision that that's how they're going to roll out this ITIL, and they're going to have it there. So yeah, absolutely go get it. Now, you should also look through the other requirements for these jobs too. How many of these employers would like you to have A+? How many would like you to have Network+? How many would like you to have a cloud-based certification, a Microsoft certification, a Cisco certification, whatever it happens to be? If 90% of the jobs out there want that particular cert, go get it. Go get that cert. They're telling you what you need to have to be successful to get that job or to get that better job. So yes, go get it. Absolutely. A lot of the thing, here's the thing, and you sort of have to, this is something I really had to work on when I was starting in IT, because I felt there was a certain way to do things. I felt that optimally, that if you wanted the help desk to solve problems faster, you would teach them about the problems that they needed to solve. It just seemed right with me. And I worked for a lot of companies who would show up and say, today, we have a new mandate. We've been asked that everybody in the help desk become ITIL certified. And back when I started in this business, I would be very resistant to that and say, That's stupid. It doesn't even have anything to do with what we do here. We're answering calls about getting people on the VPN and getting backups done. We don't make cheese here. We're in the help desk. And it would drive me crazy. And then someone smarter than me said, oh, no. They want you to know this. They are investing in their business, and they feel they've made a business decision that says, if we can get everybody on board with understanding ITIL, we feel that we can connect more of our technical teams to the rest of the company and maybe help them understand better the things we're doing here. It's not an invalid concern. It's not a bad decision. It just happens to be very different than perhaps how I would run the business. But as I was informed many times, you're not in charge. You're not making those decisions. You don't run the business. They run the business, and they want you to have it, and you have to go get it, or you're not going to work here anymore. I said, well, if you put it that way, I'd love to get ITIL certified. Let's go. And I did. And it just made me understand that there are certain things you're going to be doing in your career that probably are suboptimal. They probably are. And they were probably created in someone's mind at a higher level where they really think that's the right thing to do. And in their mind, that is the right thing to do. But in yours, you have a different way of doing it, but it's not your company. And as this person said to me, and they were absolutely right, if you want to go do it, go make your own company. Okay. I think I'll do that. Next question. Let's keep going with this list. It says, oh, this is pretty good. So we haven't really talked about this very much, but I think that's a good one to go. We'll go with this question that asks, we'll keep going through the list. This is from Wellner, who asks, as someone who's starting into IT and would like to sell his services as freelance/contractor to gain experience, what would be a fair price point for the services per hour or as a whole? Well, this is one that it's very much based on the market that you're in. It's very much based on how much knowledge you have, how many things you've done in the industry, and the things that you are an expert in. Many people price things differently depending on what you're doing. A lot of people will price things on a per hour basis. Other people will do it on a per task basis. Just depends on what makes sense. And I think one of the best things you can do is start looking at the different IT folks in your area and see what they're asking. There's a lot of third-party websites that will connect you with potential customers. So the Fivers of the world, for example, are very good. And there's some others that really focus on things like IT type help. Plenty of third-party places like that where you can get a job or something you can do on the weekend. You get paid a little bit of money and someone gets their service. You get a little bit of money and you're off to the next thing. Those are great websites. And I've used them in the past, not to provide services, but to get services. I might be looking at a problem I'm trying to solve and I think I really need somebody to solve that, but I'm so busy writing this content. I really want somebody else to have a look at that. I'll go on one of those sites, find somebody who looks knowledgeable in what they're doing. I'll vet them out pretty well. I'll send them a note and say, I need you to do this. How does this amount of money sound? They go, great. We'll get it done tomorrow. Like, fabulous, finished. They do it. It looks great. I pay them. We're done. Sort of this contractor type service. So you may want to look at some of those sites for what people are asking, because you can ask your own price with those. You may want to see what other people in your area ask. In fact, you might want to call a company that does this type of thing. Hey, I've got a virus on my computer. I see that you guys do virus repair. How much does it cost to get a virus removed from a Windows computer? Oh, it costs you $150. Okay, thanks. Now you can bill your services at $150 or more or less. You know what somebody in your area is asking, and then you can adjust your prices accordingly. That's the benefit of the capitalist type environment we find ourselves in, is we can be very good at a particular function or feature. We can find that niche, and you can even ask for more money. If less people are doing it, that means your skills and your services are more valuable. So there's no one answer for this. It's not like globally the answer is $100 to remove a virus. It's that way everywhere in the world, in every country, and that's how much it costs. No, it's going to depend on where you are, how much you know, whether you want to do that or not. Maybe you do it by hour. Maybe you do it as a straight fee. It's up to you. But it's very different. But there's plenty of people in your area that are already doing this that you could maybe look at some of those and see what's going on with that. Coming from an environment, I used to work in systems engineering, so there was a very strong sales part of that. I had a salesperson who handled, writing the actual quotes, but I would be involved in the negotiations. I would be involved in setting up the justification for the pricing that we have. If something didn't work right and we knew it didn't work right, I would be the one to say, yes, what they're looking for, this technically doesn't do the way they want. So maybe a discount is involved. Okay, we'll give you a little discount on that one. How does this sound? You'll get the same product, but we'll give it to you at 5% less, at 10% less, and let the negotiations begin. It will really help you for anybody else who's trying to get into this field of doing freelancing or having your own business that does this. It is really important that you begin being very comfortable with how money is talked about. That's one of the biggest things I found in negotiation is that people were always worried to talk numbers. And I think the more comfortable you are in describing, here's what the price is, here's the value we're bringing, and then being able to really understand the negotiation process is one that is a skill acquired over time, certainly, but it's one that's very valuable. And so if you're planning to get in this type of thing, I would highly recommend you do that. So there's no price point I can give you, but I can certainly tell you there are places to go to get better at setting prices, understanding how to price things, and how to make people happy with the pricing that you have created, or find ways that you can get a flexibility to the price. I've always found that technical people are very good at being technical, but very often they are not very good at some of the important parts of business. And I think if you're someone who's working along those lines to become better in business, you need to be on both sides. For a job like that, you need to be really good on the technical side, but you also need to be really good on the business side. It's not that hard. We often will talk to people about how hard it is to do things with business, but it's not that hard, really. You just need to focus on what the important parts are for your customer, put yourself in their shoes. And there's plenty of books on this. For negotiation, I think it's important that you become more familiar, or at least more comfortable with negotiation. There's probably some great YouTube videos. I should look around at those. I think those would absolutely be something to do. Other questions. This is a pretty good one. It's kind of off the field of what we would normally talk about. So, of course, I'm going to talk about it. Zim asks, bonjour, professor. What type of dressing should IT professionals wear if there's any specifics? This is probably one of the the biggest fights you'll find on Reddit is, what do we wear to a job interview? What do we wear to work? What do we wear when doing things? And it's different depending on where you are in the world, and it's different as time goes on. When I started in this industry, everybody wore suits. I wore a tie, a dress shirt, a jacket, dress slacks, and that's what I wore to work at an insurance company in the IT department. But because it was an insurance company, again, the executives on high felt it was important for everyone in the company to look professional. So as I'm on the floor of his secretary's desk, she's gone out to lunch, I'm under there trying to fix a wiring problem. I'm in my suit, my tie is kind of wrapped around my neck and trying to get this thing done. I've got a flashlight. It's dusty. I come out of there. I'm a mess. My suit is now dirty. And now they look at that and go, oh, wait, there might be some room to change this rule, that people who have to go under desks and deal with this type of thing, maybe they don't have to wear a tie. Maybe they don't have to be in a suit, but they have to be in a dress shirt and slacks. There's opportunity there. And as time has gone on, I believe, for better or worse, at least in the United States, we become a lot more casual on the IT side. It's gotten to a point that when I was going from company to company every day and talking to people, I would say the vast majority of folks are in a sports shirt. Well, at least here in the Southeast U.S., during the warmer months, we are in a shirt like this one, a collared shirt with some buttons, and we're in some slacks. tuck the shirt in, and we're looking what most people call business casual. There are jobs, though, I would run into some companies, though, where people are still having to wear ties. So it really depends on the company you're working with. That's sort of the scenario you run into everywhere. It depends. It really does depend. But I would say the vast majority, even in some of the biggest companies in the world, I would walk into Fortune 10, Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies, and they were dressed in a sports shirt and slacks. Sports shirt and slacks. It was pretty similar in the industry. Now, if you're going to an interview, that's different. Interviews, you need to be one step higher than what you would normally wear to work. Now, that doesn't mean come in a tux. That doesn't even mean come in a suit. But if you're doing your research and you find, if you're watching people leave work, you're like, okay, they're wearing slacks and a sports shirt. All right, I'm going to wear a dress shirt and a jacket. No tie. They're not wearing ties. I'm not going to wear a tie, but I'm going to wear a dress shirt, maybe with button down or a nice collar. I'm going to wear just a kind of a blue blazer. You know, it doesn't have to be fancy. We're not talking about a suit jacket, but maybe a blazer of some kind. Country club casual, if you will. So you've got a blue shirt, maybe some tan slacks, maybe a white shirt. That's great. You know, that is nice. It looks sharp. It's not over the top. It's not enough where you're walking down the walkway and people are going, what is this guy going to? It's got a funeral later. What's going on? Is he getting married? What's happening? Am I being fired? What's going on here? Nope. It's just somebody who's interviewing. But if you are just one step above what they're doing, you're good. Now, if you walk in, everybody's in jeans and T-shirts, and there are places like this. That's not unusual in the world of IT. You'll find some organizations that are jeans and T-shirts. Well, then maybe you show up in your interview in a sports shirt and slacks. And that's as far as you go, one step above. And it's kind of the same for anybody in IT, especially it's the same thing for women in IT. There is a super dressy, there is the country club casual, and there is, jeans and a T-shirt. Everybody has that. So you just go one step above what that happens to be. And it's not a do or die situation. If you showed up with a tie on, and I've done this, I've gone into meetings where I've worn a tie because I used to work for a company where you did have to wear a tie. I wear a tie. People walk in, they go, why are you wearing a tie? We don't like people wearing ties around here. I'm like, good. I take my tie off, put it in the jacket in my pocket, and now I'm just wearing a jacket. And everybody would laugh over it, and I got to be in a meeting without having to wear a tie, and everybody was more comfortable. Because that's really what they're saying. They weren't saying, we don't like the way you look. They're saying, we don't like the way we look next to you. That's what you're trying to avoid. You don't want people to be uncomfortable next to you. That's really the idea, and being able to work through those. So that's what I would recommend doing. You want to be just one click, one step higher than what people would normally wear to work in that particular organization. And I think you use that as a good point of reference. I think you'll be fine. I know we're past the top of the hour. I want to do at least one more question, though, that's in here. I'm going to keep going through these. And I think this is a pretty good one because this is a frequently asked question I get on my site. So I think it's worthwhile. It's from Oliver, and he asks, is there a good order in terms of certificates you would suggest acquiring in order to land a job in IT? I'm planning on getting the A+ and Security Plus within the next few months. Besides those, is there anything you would highly recommend? Doesn't matter what I think, quite honestly. The problem with telling people, yes, everybody should go out and get the Microsoft Azure cert. Everybody should go out and get the Cisco CCNA. Everybody should go out and get the Red Hat cert. They should go, but it really depends on what jobs you're going for. It depends on what companies would like you to have. And as we've seen before, maybe 90% of the companies out there would like you to be ITIL certified. I would never tell you to go get that. That's not until you get to director level. Not until you get to senior manager would you want to get an ITIL level certification. But some companies want you to have an ITIL certification. And you know what I want you to have? I want you to have what they want you to have. So that's my answer is I want whatever they want you to have. And if you've looked at all of the jobs in your area, and I tell you to do this in that video I mentioned earlier, how to get a job in IT with no experience, I mentioned the process of doing your research, creating a spreadsheet, and finding every company in your local area. Maybe search around the 60 miles of where you live and look at every company with every job posting that seems to fit your requirements. You know, it's close to what you would fit if you were going to look for a job. Like you qualify for that job in your mind. And for that job, what formal education do they want? What industry certifications do they want? What type of technologies do they want you to have worked with before? Do they want you to have a knowledge of Active Directory? Do they want you to have a knowledge of packet capture? Do they want you to have a knowledge of encryption technologies? You need to know this, and they'll tell you in the job posting. You need to document all of this for that job. Now go to the next company and get the same info. Get the same info for your formal education, industry certifications, things you need to know, requirements for the job, whatever it happens to be. And once you have about 10 of those in a spreadsheet, where do things correlate together? We're not talking about high-level math here. Just look at what you've typed down and see, is there any certification that tends to be the same between them? Wow, 90% of these want ITIL. That's what I'll go get. I'll go get ITIL because 90% of the employers in my area want that. And it's very different depending on geography. If you were to look at 10 jobs in Washington, D.C. for IT professionals, I would say almost all of them are going to ask you to get the Security Plus certification. If you go to Minneapolis and you look at 10 jobs in Minneapolis, I'll bet it's not the same percentage of people wanting Security Plus. So that's what you do. It's not about what I think you should go get as your next job. It's about what they want you to have when you walk in the door. And I can't speak for them. I don't know what job you're going for. I don't know what they want. So it really is more about doing the research. In fact, this would be great to walk in and say, yeah, this is the certification I have. I got that because you and 90% of the employers in our area want people who are skilled in ITIL, and I felt that was important enough for me to go out and get it. That's a great story, by the way. I would love if somebody walked in and said that. I'm like, wow, you saw that 90%, you did your research, you went through a process for gathering the info, you evaluated everything that was in front of you, you saw some correlations between all of these different organizations, you saw something that was similar, and you went out and got it and then came to me with it. This is the kind of person I want to hire. When can you start? That's some good stuff. So it's not just about getting that. It's about the process. It's about the path. It's about telling people about the story that you went through to get to this point, because you may not even realize it, but the things you do and the processes you take are incredibly important for the people that are on the other side of this desk trying to interview you. They really want to know about process. It's nice to see someone's resume. I have this, I have this, I have this. Well, it's great, but tell me about a time when you ran into a problem and what you did to solve it, which is a common question on an interview, isn't it? But how hard do we struggle with answers for those? If you haven't prepared yourself, you should always walk in with a bunch of stories. I say this all the time in my study groups. I apologize for those of you that have to sit through the story again. But I always come with a bunch of stories in my pocket. And I mentioned some of these in my video of how to get a job in IT with no experience, is that you need to have these stories. And you can make the stories yourself. Like we can do it today. Go home, download an evaluation of Microsoft Server. Just get the latest one that's out there, or get any of them. Doesn't matter which one. Maybe if you see that in your research that you've done is that a lot of people want Microsoft Server 2020 or 2023 or 20, and whatever it is, R1, H1, whatever version they're looking for, get it of whatever version of Windows they want. Load it on your system, start up Active Directory, make it a virtual machine. So you've built a virtual machine of Windows Server. And this evaluation is usually good for, 90 days for Microsoft? So it runs for 90 days. You can build out an entire Active Directory infrastructure in there. Now run a separate Windows machine in a VM, connect it to Active Directory, and now start managing that system using some of the group policy that you can set in Active Directory. That's like a weekend project. It's very involved, maybe a week project. for some of us. And because you're going to run into problems, you're going to run into DNS issues, you're going to run into networking problems. And every time you run into a problem, document it. Every time you run into an issue, make sure you make a note of it. There's your story. And you can, when somebody says, tell us about a problem you ran into and how you solved it. Let me tell you about when I set up Active Directory in my home lab and what I ran into and how I fixed it. And now you're talking about a 15-minute story. Here's what I downloaded. We loaded it up. I ran it in VirtualBox, and I set it up initially as a private network. Then I installed this. Then we did, but I ran into a problem. My system, it couldn't connect. I did some research. It was a DNS problem. Here's what I changed on the server. Now suddenly it's able to see it properly. I'm able to connect and able to control it. From that point, I was able to set some group policies. For example, here's what I did. Now you've got more stories. So that's what you need to walk in. But you don't have the stories unless you've gone through that particular situation. You've gone through the process of building this out. So I tell people all the time, go grab open source. Go grab Linux and install it. Go grab Linux, install it, load up a database and a web server. Now you've got LAMP. If you don't know what that is, you're about to learn. And now load WordPress on it. There's a set of completely free pieces of software you can run on any machine, in a virtual machine, in a VM. Load up something free like VirtualBox. Install a Linux machine, just a single machine as a VM. Load up Apache web server. Load up MySQL. Install WordPress, and run your own web system with a content management system on top of it on that one machine. And get it working. That's a weekend or a week or 2 weeks, depending on how it goes. The thing is, you're going to run into problems. Don't think of this as fixing the problem and you're off to the next thing. Set it up as I ran into an issue and document what you're doing. Go slow. Understand what you're doing. Don't just go to a website that says, if you see error 400, type this in, then type this in, then type this in. And it fixes it. But what did you just do? If you just blindly type these in, you learned nothing. You should first, before you type it in, what is this doing on my system? What problem is this solving? And trust me, there's plenty of places you can go out there to get you documentation on what that is. But that is so useful to be able to have that story to tell that is not only answers that question of tell us about a problem you ran into and how you solved it, but it also talks about your technical acumen, your technical knowledge of this particular environment and how you became more familiar with installing a virtual machine, installing Microsoft Server, installing Linux, installing a database, MySQL. MySQL was so easy to get up and running. Here's what I did, and it worked great. I could not believe it. Installing Apache Web Server. Boy, I really ran into a problem with Apache Web Server and having the right permissions. And then installing WordPress, it gave me a white screen every time. It gave me this SQL error. It was an authentication problem, and here's how I solved it. So you're going to run into these problems all the way through. That's fantastic. You want problems. You want issues. You never learn until there's an issue. If you installed everything, it worked great. What good was that? What did you learn? Nothing. It was pointless. What a pointless exercise. You want to install something and have it be an absolute disaster. Maybe I'm overspeaking just a little bit. You want it to break because when it breaks is when you learn something. When something is not working properly, that's when you solve the puzzle. That's what IT is. If I had to summarize IT, what are people in IT? What do? They solve problems. They solve puzzles. We love solving puzzles. That's what we do. And we look at these as, wow, that's a complicated puzzle. This Rubik's Cube's a tough one. Okay, we figured it out. Let me document how to do that Rubik's Cube. Now I know how to solve that puzzle. Give me another one. Okay, here's a laser printer. Wait, that's 20 puzzles. That wasn't what I was expecting. That's what you're going to find yourself in. Keep doing that and working through that, and I think you'll do fine. Well, I think that covers us anyway for our study group. That was a good hour of Q&A in our first study group, and you guys did great with the questions on there. There were a couple that threw us. We did okay. I think we got through that one all right, and we had great questions in the after show. Thank you so much for sending these in and asking us about some of these topics. We love going through this, and this is probably the highlight of my week when I get to do these live streams. So thank you so much for being here and doing it. We got another one on Thursday. Come on back 2 days from now. If you're here live, this would be on Thursday, August the 10th. 12 noon Eastern time. You will find the breakdown of when this is going to be on our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar, or in the events channel on our Discord. We have a Core 2 A+ study group on that day. So make sure you come back for that one. Of course, we got Network Plus next week. We got Security Plus the week after that. There's always something going on here. We're always having a good time, and we thank you for being here with us. Thanks for joining us. We're going to see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.